music.
There is no terrible way to win. There is only winning.
We won't be out long.
Take your time. Track's all yours.
You ready? The name on the middle of that steering wheel should tell you that I was born ready. Hit it. Attaboy.
Let me drive. I will make a fool out of you.
I got a message for all of them. Shake and bake.
What does that do? Did that blow your mind? That just happened.
These cars, you sit in a box, a coffin, gasoline all around you. It isn't like it being inside a bomb.
It's tough enough being a girl on the track. Living in my dad's shadow doesn't help much.
You have to be kind to the car. You feel the poor thing groaning underneath you.
No race was ever won in the first corner.
I'm gonna give you an engine, low to the ground, extra big oil pan will cut the wind from underneath you. That'll give you 30 to 40 more horsepower.
Every one of us has to find a reason to do this. You do it because you're driven.
Brakes are warm. Tires are warm.
I'll work in the cars and I'll drive and I'll eat and sleep and I'll work in the cars and I'll drive.
Damn fast, and when he runs it close together, it requires fantastic concentration and rather special skills.
I was beginning to think I'd never be anything more than a piston-happy lead-foot punk. Then this starts to happen.
If you're going to push a piece of machinery to the limit and expect it to hold together, you have to have some sense of where that limit is.
Besides, the best drivers don't dwell on the future or the past. The best drivers focus only on the present.
They could never have imagined it, those pioneers who invented the automobile, that it would possess us like this in our imaginations, our dreams.
I'm gonna give you a fuel line that will hold an extra gallon of gas. I'm gonna shave half an inch off you and shape you like a bullet.
Somebody put it in your mind you gotta be perfect every time out or you're a failure. Well, forget that. Just forget it.
Racing is in my blood.
I was put on this earth to race cars.
I accept every time I get in my car. There's 20% chance I could die, and I can live with it, but not 1% more.
No, Nicky, don't bring the percentages into this. Don't be a pro. The minute you do that, you kill what's good about this. You kill the sport.
And at that speed, your reactions can barely keep up with these sudden changes in direction.
You ready to put away your toys and grow up?
You want me to work the pit and you drive? Fine, we'll try that.
The car's a living, breathing thing, and she's alive.
If any of us imagined, really imagined, what it would be like to go into a tree at 150 miles an hour, we would probably never get into the cars at all. None of us.
Are you ready to become a real race car driver?
I am just as good as anybody out there on that track, and I don't need anybody to win my races for me.
I wish my daddy were alive to see this, to feel this.
And when we get you primed, painted, and weighed, you'll be ready to go out on that racetrack. You hear me? You're gonna be perfect.
You don't understand what happens, do you? They make 10,000 cars, they make them exactly the same way, and one or two of them turn out to be something special. Nobody knows why.
When I won it was probably the last time I ever felt pure victory.
So it has always seemed to me that to do something very dangerous requires a certain absence of imagination.
Because I'm quicker than all of you.
Soon you will know what it is like to be defeated by the hands of somebody who is truly better than you.
The only thing to do here is to drive just as fast as you know how and hope your car doesn't break.
And if you no longer go for a gap that exists, you're no longer a racing driver.
If you ain't first, you're last. There's 40 other vultures out there who managed to finish the race on their tires. You see Darrell Waltrip using up his tires?
There's nothing I can't do with a race car.
I mean, hell, isn't that what we're in this for? To stare death in the face and to cheat it? I mean, come on, there's nobility in that. It's like being knights.
Sometimes you could swear the whole thing's falling to bits.
No pressure, nobody breathing down my back, just driving because I left it pure.
On the other hand, I suppose potential problems are in the back of your mind all the time.
So in many ways, I feel responsible for what happened. And
You were, but trust me, watching you win those races while I was fighting for my life, you were equally responsible for getting me back in the car.
You're so lucky. You sit there all closed in by machinery and bolts, precise things. There's hardly any room for you. It must be a nice, safe feeling.
Yeah, you gotta learn to trust something. Might just as well be the seat of your pants.
A lot of people go through life doing things badly. Racing is important to men who do it well. When you're racing, it's life. Anything that happens before or after, it's just waiting.
Well, we can drive. We can drive beyond the limits of the tires, the engine, the car, anything else.
Look out there is the perfect lap. No mistakes, every gear change, every corner. Perfect. You see it.
I just hope when you do, that I'm there to see it.
Ask any racer, any real racer. It don't matter if you win by an inch or a mile. Winning's winning.
But it isn't just business, is it? What we do, it's passion, love, which is why we're prepared to risk our lives for it.
Racing
That's the name of the game, isn't it? Win or lose, put up or shut up.
Why does everybody keep telling me what my problem is?
That you get so emotional.
You would never, ever say that to a guy.
If you don't leave your feelings off the track, you're never going to get what you want.
I'm a race driver, and I can win it on my own. Please let me race.
Fine. Then let's race.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is round 5 of season 2 of the Grand Prix World Series here in the beautiful surroundings of Mount Fuji here in Japan. We are set for some fantastic racing today. My name is Topher Smith. Alongside me, Tom Cairns. And Tom, we've had 4 fantastic events so far, and across both leagues, 4 different winners in each of the first 4 races. That applies to both League 1 and League 2. It's been highly competitive so far. What's your take on the season so far?
Yeah, it's just as I thought, it's been really unpredictable. I mean, we've had many different drivers taken to the front, which is exactly what I want to see. You know, different drivers being battling out for victory. There is sort of maybe a few standout favourites in terms of who could be going for the title in both Leagues 1 and 2. Who could possibly end up being relegated or who could end up being promoted. But, you know, every race is different, you know, and I think when you're at the front in each races, you've got to make the most of the opportunity, and some have been able to do it, others haven't quite done so.
As you say, Tom, it's been so competitive so far. If we look at the results in League 2 so far this season, the opening round in Taupo in New Zealand, that was won by the La Route of Callum Ilott, taking top honours in the first event of the season. Round 2 in Adelaide in Australia, a very attritional race, but it was Adrian Sutil who lasted the distance in that particular one to bring home the 25 points. Then round 3, Sepang, Malaysia, Roman Grosjean in only his second race in the Grand Prix World Series, taking the victory there for Carter McColeman and the Pacific team. And then last time out in Yongam, it was 1 win apiece for the La Route team as Alexander Rossi brought Will Knight 2 wins out of 4 races. Here in round 5 in Fuji, we have a life 1-2 on the grid. Antonio Fuoco really impressing to take his maiden pole position in the Grand Prix World Series, but only 0.03 of a second ahead of teammate Marino Sato, so very close between those two. And Tom, they've got the advantage in qualifying today, but their nearest rival, third on the grid, Adrian Sutil, over 0.4 behind. Life really fast in qualifying. Andrew Sampson has put in a very fast car for this season, but possibly at the expense of reliability. I mean, they've got a fast car. Can they last a distance?
I'm sure they can. I mean, with Marino Sato, this is his home Grand Prix, remember, as well, so we're looking to excel in front of his home fans. I'm impressed to see Dario Franchitti up there in 5th in the second of the HRTs, because he's struggled this season for me, but he seems to have got it right so far this week in Fuji. Kenny lost the distance, and welcome done to Lucas Di Grassi as well to get his sack speed up there in 6th place. That is a much big boost there for the sack speed team. With him there and Sam Bird in 13th. The Pacific's way down actually in 15th and 16th, which is quite a surprise because we expected them to be in the mix for the championship this season. But the last couple of rounds, they seem to have dropped away a little bit. So I just hope that's not a sign of things to come for Carter McColeman and his boys.
we'll have to wait and see how the rest of the season pans out for them. Let's take a look at the Drivers' Championship before we get going here in Fuji. Alexander Rossi at the head of the table with 51 points, courtesy of his victory that he picked up in Yonggam. He leads the championship ahead of Romain Grosjean on 35 points. Adrian Sutil, a race winner also this season, 31 for the HRT. And then two Larousses within the top four as Callum Ilott has 25 points. He brought home the win in the opening race of the season, but has not scored in any of the other races so far. So Callum Ilott, he's quick, but doesn't necessarily have the luck or the reliability on his side. Wirtz and Sato also on 25 points, but neither of them have race wins yet. Sato might want to change that going into his home Grand Prix from second on the grid. Lopez's podium last time out brings him up into 8th place just behind his teammate Winkelhock. So both Eurobruns in the top 10 there. Sandberg in 9th for Zach Speed with 19 points and Will Stevens with 18 points in P10. Looking at the teams now as well. Both Larousses and the top four in the drivers equates the lead in the constructors' standings. Larousse on 76 points. Leighton House scoring consistently to be on 52 points and second overall at the moment. The Life team are 1-2 on the grid today. Could a good result potentially give them the lead in a championship after today? We'll have to wait and see how that pans out. 45 points as it stands at the moment for the Italian team. Eurobrun on 40 points, and then we have Pacific on 38. HRT only on 26. And Tom, HRT were one of those teams we would expect to be higher up there, especially with a win for Sutil already this season, but they're just not scoring consistently enough at the moment.
No, I'm looking at their points here. It says that HRT's got 26 points. I don't know if you've got your numbers wrong, but...
yes, that should be 36. That's an error by the graphics department there. So apologies for that. They were actually on 36 points. But the point still stands, Tom. Like, you would have thought they'd be scoring a bit more than that.
Yeah, they would have been scoring more than that. And, I don't understand why they're not higher up, because if you look at Larousse, who are shooting off into the distance, you would think that a HRT would be right up there. But I think just another reminder of everyone is the promotion relegation system. The top three from the League Two race go up to League One for next season. So I think HRT's target would have to be in the top three, and so far they're only 9 points behind that. So there's plenty of time still. We're only a quarter of the way through the campaign, and so much can change.
Well, we have Adrian Sutil third on the grid and Dario Franchitti in 5th place. He's done a very good job there. So the potential for some good points today for HRT and for John Munro. Modena and Coloni, the two Italian teams, sharing 30 points each. They're in 7th and 8th. And then Zach Speed in 9th on 20 points and Real with 18 points, just breaking into the top 10 there. So there's a lot to talk about as we get into the League 2 race. But how about we stop talking and we just get on with the race, shall we? Let's head down to track side as we get ready for the League 2 Fuji Grand Prix. A quick run through of the grid. It's a live 1-2 for Fuoco, taking his maiden pole position in the Grand Prix World Series ahead of teammate Marino Sato. Adrian Sutil, championship contender, third on the grid ahead of Alan McNish. A very good job there for the Scuderia Coloni. Dario Franchitti, 5th place ahead of Lucas Di Grassi, his best qualifying of the season so far in his second race since his return. Alexander Wirtz, 7th ahead of Will Stevens, and then the other Will of Will Power, heading up row 5 alongside fellow American Scott Speed. Alexander Rossi on row 6 with Perry McCarthy. Sandberg and Jose Maria Lopez make up row 7. Former teammates in Formula E, those two. That should be a great battle between them. And All Pacific row 8 between Romain Grosjean and Daniel Kvyat. And then we have race winner Callum Ilott alongside Cristiano De Mata in the Fond Metal on row 9. Mike Conway and Valentino Rossi scored points on his debut last time out on row 10. Marcus Winkelhock and Vincenzo Sospiri are on row 11 ahead of Neil Jarni. Enrique Benaldi, and on the back row is the Force India duo of Martin Brundle and Alex Zanardi. That is your grid for the League 2 race, which will be getting underway very shortly now. And Tom, it's a live 1-2. Will it be a live 1-2 when we come to the end of the race?
Will it shed some light? I never said light then. They could do with some brand new life of being at the front of the grid. Can they convert that into the race victory?
Well, we'll have to wait and see how this transpires. This is a little bit of a tricky circuit. If you remember back to the Season 1 race that we had, pole sitter Takuma Sato, he was looking good for the race win, but unfortunately wasn't to be for him. A mechanical issue ruling him out, but we are now waiting for the start of the Season 2 Fuji Grand Prix here in the League 2 race. And we are underway. So Antonio Fuoco leads off the line. Sato going with him and possibly going to challenge down into turn 1. It's quite a long run down into turn 1 actually. We're trying to see through the back to see whether there is going to be any argy-bargy across these 26 drivers. It looks like Sato's trying to get up the inside of Fuoco into turn 1. It looks like he has done so. We're looking at Alan McNish there in P5 in the Scuderia Coloni. And a little bit of a traffic jam there going into turn 1. That's fairly commonplace now in these races. We get a bit of a traffic jam going into the first corner, but it looks like they've all sorted themselves out without any problems. Now riding on board with Marino Sato, who has indeed taken the lead of this Grand Prix. And oh, Alexander Wirtz going wide onto the grass there, trying to go around the outside of Alan McNish, but the Scotsman having none of it as he holds on to P5 there. Wirtz getting offline onto the grass, but he holds on to P6 ahead of Scott Speed and Lucas Di Grassi. And back to the front here, Marino Sato, he's got Fuoco right behind him again. And is Fuoco going to try and take the lead back again? Yes, he is, going down into the braking zone. Antonio Fuoco down the inside, and from pole position he gets back the lead of the Fuji Grand Prix. So Tom, it's still a life 1-2 as we get towards the end of the first lap.
Sato getting the better start over his teammate, but Fuoco down into the inside of the chicane. What a brilliant start from Dario Franchitti from 5th to 3rd. And for the first time this season, we've seen the true pace of Dario Franchitti getting the better of his team at the start. There's still a long way to go yet. It's a 50-lap race here at the Fuji Speedway, and I would imagine strategy will take its toll on things. Well, have a say on the race result, but it's quite a long pit lane, Topher, given the speed limit and the time with which drivers are coming in and out. So I would probably say one-shot strategy is going to be the way to go. As you can see, Lucas Di Grassi making a move on what looks like the Real of Scott Speed as they end lap 1, and Di Grassi should have the upper hand on this occasion down into turn 1.
I will point out that is actually the Modena of Scott Speed. I know it's very confusing because we do have some liveries that are very similar in this. There is the LaRousse there with the yellow rear wing, also a mainly blue car, and it's a bit further towards the back that we have the Reals. And maybe something that the teams need to look at going into future races about some of the similar liveries we've seen. So Tom, I completely understand thinking that that was actually a Real, but it was the Modena of Scott Speed. I'm afraid we might see if any teams are willing to change their liveries going into future races and future seasons. And as you were saying about Dario Franchitti, Tom, he did qualify on pole position for the Adelaide Grand Prix, so he's got some speed. Not really the consistency at the moment, so it's good to see him up in P3, starting from, I think it was P5 on the grid that he started, so he's had a tremendous start. And at the moment, he is keeping the life duo honest. He's less than a second behind Marino Sato, so a little bit of a gap, but he's still there or thereabouts. We are now riding on board with Alan McNish in 5th position, looking back at the Leighton House of Alexander Wirtz. Wirtz has been a very consistent scorer so far. He's had 2 retirements so far across the course of the season, but in the other 2 he's scored very high points per positions. He's up there in the high reaches of the championship fight so far. So we've said a few times across the course of the season already, Thomas Wirtz is looking to get past McNish. Consistency absolutely key in this championship, and Wirtz at the moment showing just how consistent he is, running consistently in the top 5.
And making a move on McNish he goes. Wirtz continuing his good run of form. He was unlucky to miss out on points last time out in Yongam. He was running, I think, in the top 4 at the point before, which he retired late on, which is a big shame for Chris Craveney and the Leighton House squad. But he's putting himself back into the game as Wirtz. As you can see, Dario Franchitti continuing to do a fine job there in the HRT, pulling away from Adrian Sutil and making inroads on Marino Sato in front of him. And just looking further down the order, looking at Alex Zanardi, who's made quite a good start actually in the Force India, who have really struggled this season so far. He started 26th on the grid and he's made his way up into 20th place.
So a good start there for Alex Zanardi, the Italian driving for Force India. There is another Italian there, Valentino Rossi, who made his debut last time out. And Lopez is going slow there, so the Eurorun, it's a suspension failure for the Argentine. That's a real shame. Eurorun, they do have a fairly quick car, but they do have a quick car at the expense of reliability. So that has already come back to bite them. And Jose Maria Lopez, the first retirement from the Fuji Grand Prix, that is a real shame for him. Just trying to check my notes here where he started. He started in 14th position, so solid midfield run at the moment, but this is a guy who finished on the podium in the last race. He was expecting a lot more out of today, so it's not to be for Jose Maria Lopez. Only one Eurobrun is left running. That is Marcus Winkelhock, who started in 21st position for this race and has not made his way up into the top 15, so we can't see exactly where he is on the graphic at the moment. But as we enter into lap 4, De Grassi has just made his way past Alan McNish for 6th position. We're looking at Mike Conway, who's coming under attack from, I think that was the other Eurobrunner, Winkelhock, speak of the devil. So Winkelhock going down the inside of Mike Conway there, and he takes 20th position. He's the one remaining Eurobrun left in this race, so he will want to make up as many positions as he can, try and at least salvage something from this Grand Prix. We now ride on board with our race leader, Antonio Fuoco, 1.3 seconds in the lead over his teammates. It's looking very good for the live team and Andrew Sampson so far, Tom.
I'm loving this onboard view. I'm so glad that the developers have managed to update the onboard for this particular championship. It's absolutely brilliant to see. And I'm just looking to see where's Franchitti. He's still in 3rd place. He's over 2 seconds in front of Suttel. So Franchitti may be dropping back a little bit from Suttel, but he's most certainly pulling away from Suttel. Will Suttel be on a heavier fuel load to his teammate?
And looking at the YouTube live chat that we have going on, welcome everybody who is watching along today. Phil Kinch, are you already trying to play the mind games with your rivals? Phil Kinch, he is the team principal of AGS, runs in the League 1, the race of which we will see later on. He's trying to taunt Andrew Sampson a bit, saying, that's a nice 1-2 you have there. Well, as we know, Phil, if you got the speed, you might not necessarily have the reliability, so come on, play nice, Phil. I know you'll do, but play nice. Let's give him at least a chance of this one. As we see Roman Grosjean going down the inside of Callum Ilott, and that is P13 for the Frenchman. We're now riding on board with Marcus Winkelhock, who's trying to chase down, I think that is a Eurobrun. Sorry, not Eurobrun, a Fond Metal. Okay, sorry, we're riding on board with Eurobrun. It's a little bit difficult sometimes when they've all got very red liveries. That is a Fond Metal up ahead of Marcus Winkelhock. Not fighting for the points at the moment, but we're only on lap 5 out of 50. We're a 10th of the way through the League 2 Fuji Grand Prix race. Still a long way to go here, as Will Stevens going down the inside of McNish. So, Tom, McNish seems like he had good pace in qualifying, but now we're into the race. Seems to be showing up a little bit.
Yes, and well, the same can't quite be said for Paul McCarthy. He's in 11th place, he's making steady progress. I can't quite remember where he started actually. Just looking on the
started P12. Looking at this.
Yeah, he's up a place into 11th, but that was maybe because of Lopez's retirement. You know, Coloni just seemed to be struggling a little bit in terms of race pace, and McNish already 11 seconds off the race lead.
So one of the factors that we have in the Grand Prix World Series, Coloni does have a very fast car. They've got a lot of horsepower behind them, but McNish and McCarthy, like, no offence to either of them, but they are starting to get a little bit on the older side now. Definitely not within the same age bracket as the likes of Antonio Fuoco, Marino Sato, Will Stevens, people like that. So age may be playing a little bit against them here. So their team principal, I've completely forgotten who their team principal is actually. Probably really bad of me, I can't find it in my notes anywhere. So they've got a quick car, but their drivers, they are definitely experienced, no doubt, Tom. But maybe not so much at their peak anymore.
Just looking to see further down the order, you know, with Fiat and Grosjean up a few places actually. So I'm going away from your question, Topher. I sort of misread what you've said. But we can see Scott Speed going down the inside of what looks like Alan McNish. McNish continuing to struggle at the moment. So Scott Speed in his Modena is up into 8th place now.
Right, I have just checked through my notes, and Chris Buxton, hello if you're watching, he is the team principal of Scuderia Coloni. So, yeah, got a good car there, but maybe not necessarily the fastest drivers on the grid. No offence to Alan McNish or Perry McCarthy, they're both fine racing drivers, both very accomplished. But when you've got some of the young up-and-comers coming into the Grand Prix World Series, it might not be the easiest to keep up with them. Anyway, let's move on away from that discussion. So I'm riding on board with Dario Franchitti in P3. Now about 5 seconds off of the race lead of Antonio Fuoco, but still pegging along in 3rd place at the moment. So Franchitti, as it stands, I know there's a long way to go, Tom, but at the moment, looking like he's quite good for a maiden podium in the Grand Prix World Series.
So he deserves it. I think this is going to be one of the best chances of him getting a podium out of this. We haven't seen too much of Dario Franchitti this season, but hopefully he'll be able to last the distance in this one. And looking further down the order, there's nothing too much that's changed. I know that Wirtz has been on the tail of Suttel over the last lap or so just keep an eye on Wirtz's pace as he tries to make his way through the field. There is Perry McCarthy in 11th place in the Coloni. Will Power behind. Oh, he's in a Coloni sandwich at the moment with McNish in front of him, but can he get out of that sandwich and make a move on Scotsman?
Not at this particular moment just yet, but he is right on the back of the Coloni, so maybe a move for the Australian is coming imminently. McNish has been going backwards since the start of this race. He qualified up in P4, a fantastic achievement for the Scotsman, but the race pace not really there so much at the moment. Now, John Monroe, he's being a little bit crafty here in the comments, I see. He's asking for predictions of when his drivers, who are Dario Franchitti and Adrian Suttel, currently running 3rd and 5th, he's asking for predictions of when his guys are going to break down. Which, John, first of all, not the right attitude to have. But Double Bubble Disco Queen asking if it's maybe a reverse commentator's curse. Now that is forward thinking. Trying to undo the curse there as Will Power gets down the inside of Alan McNish, and he's already through before reaching the apex. That is P9 for the Leighton House, and Alan McNish started 4th and down into P10. He's got his teammate right behind him, so maybe some teamwork is forthcoming for the Coloni team.
Just to interrupt you there, Topher, Suttel's lost 2 places in the space of a few corners. Is he developing an issue at the moment?
That is a good spot, Tom. I hadn't seen that. So Suttel was originally running up in 4th place a lap or 2 ago. He's now down behind Lucas Di Grassi, down into 6th position. So maybe a developing problem there for the HRT. We haven't yet seen anything on screen to suggest, well, the problem is that, well, there is Suttel trying to make a move on Di Grassi there, so maybe not a problem, maybe just a loss of momentum or a mistake somewhere. But given the fact he's already trying to get back past Di Grassi again, I don't think there will be a problem there for the HRT. Looking at Marino Sata there in P2, the life cards are just running away with us at the moment. But Tom, we've said it so many times, you can put a lot of your prize money and development into making the car powerful and making it fast. But if you do that, it is at the expense of reliability. So I wish them all the best. I don't wish any sort of reliability issues upon them, but they're more a risk than others, wouldn't you say?
Well, try not to mention too much about Prost last season with the way they had a powerful car and then kept breaking down all the time. But yeah, you need to have a fast car to score good points, but you need to get to the end of races. And you know, I've sort of had this thing, and you know, I'd much rather be finishing races than seeing both cars drop out. But in with the Prost team, they're not scoring that many points, so we have to take more of a gamble now with this promotion relegation system.
It's a really, like, you know, thin line to tread. You want to make your car powerful and get to the end of the race at the sharp end of the field, but when you have poor reliability on the car and you're not necessarily finishing races, you're not getting to the end and you're not getting that prize money. So for that reason, it's such a competitive championship because there's so much at play. It's not just a simple case of I want that much on that car, as Will Stevens is trying to get past Adrian Suttel. So Suttel loses another position. So Tom, maybe he does have a developing issue, or is it just a loss of momentum somewhere? It's not really apparent that he has a problem at the moment. But given that, say, 3 laps ago, he was running up in P4 and it's now down to P7, something's not quite right there in the HRT.
No, he's in a Modena sandwich, but I think he's going to continue to fall down the order if his pace continues to drop. We're looking at Will Stevens in your picture, Suttel, and then Speed, with Will Power waiting to pounce in the Leighton House. Will Power doing a fine job replacing Robert Wickens. He finished on the podium in his first out. You could just see Scott Speed making a move down the inside Suttel and gets the job done, braking ever so late there. I think you see a lock-up further ahead. Couldn't quite tell who that was. That may well have been Lucas Di Grassi, but either way, Speed has gotten up in front of Suttel. It's a matter of time before Will Power follows suit. We can just see the Andrea Moda of Vincenzo Sospiri getting past the Force India of Alex Zanardi. Zanardi beginning to struggle now in the Force India after a brilliant start to this race.
So, looking at the order as it runs on lap 10 out of 50, a fifth of the way through the League 2 Fuji Grand Prix, Antonio Fuoco leads 2.5 seconds ahead of Marino Sato, now 2.6 seconds as Sato cuts the beam there. Dario Franchitti, 7.2 off the lead. The lifeguards are really running away with it at the moment. Alexander Wirtz, 11.8 seconds in 4th position. De Grassi there in 5th place, having a fine run there for the Zach Speed, the leading car in that team at the moment, with Sam Bird down in 15th position. There's Sospiri blocking off a move there from Alex Zanardi, trying to get back up into what I think is P23, down at the bottom end of the field. Will Stevens, the lead Modena, in P6, with Scott Speed now past Adrian Sutil into P7, so Modena running 6th and 7th there. Adrian Sutil from 4th to 8th, not a good run there for one of the championship contenders. It must be said, he's got a very fast car underneath him and is a very fast driver. Won a race already this season, but it's just not going right for him so far in Fuji. Will Power up into 9th place in Leightonhausen. Alan McNish down into P10 as we've got a gearbox issue for Enrique Bernaldi. So Ewan Gale and the Fon Metal team losing a car early on in this race as Enrique Bernaldi pulls over to the side of the circuit on the start-finish line. And we know already, Tom, that Ewan Gale not really taking this championship too seriously. He's got a bit of a self-aim of finishing at the bottom. He's just doing it for a bit of fun, really. But, you know, you got to be in it to win it in some ways, and if you're in it and not trying to win it, then, you know, is it easier to take it a bit less seriously and have a bit more fun, or do you think the competitive edge for some people will still take over?
I think it depends how the season pans out, really. I mean, for a few weeks you may feel like you want to sort of have a laugh, and then the next few weeks you want to sort of try and maybe take it a little bit seriously. So I can imagine maybe later in the season Ewan Gale's attitude towards the league will change, because he wants to sort of be more serious with the Fon Metal team. And if the Fon Metal team, looking at where they are in the standings, they've really struggled to get race results. Just trying to get my team standings up on here. So as I've thought, Fon Metal are 12th in the standings on 4 points, so at least they're above Force India at the moment. I don't know if he's trying to sort of play this game of, oh, on paper we are the worst team, but I'm going to make them as good as they can with what we have.
So Force India, as mentioned, headed up by Ed Spencer this season. He is the only team principal, only team within the entirety of the Grand Prix World Series across both leagues, who currently sits on 0 points. So in both League 1 and League 2, he's the only team to have not taken a single point so far this season. His best result coming at the Taupo Grand Prix, where both of his cars finished 14th and 15th. That is as good as it has got for the Force India squad so far this season. At the moment, not really looking to trouble that 14th place finish just yet, but we still have a long way to go in this particular Grand Prix. We'll have to wait and see how the rest of it goes. Maybe we could have a few moments of attrition later on. We could maybe see them crack into the top 10 or maybe even the top 12. I mean, Tom, I'd absolutely love to see every single team take points so far. And at the moment, Ed Spencer kind of letting the side down. I don't mean that in the bad way, but it would be nice if we could show just how competitive this championship is by having every single team across the two leagues at least score some points.
Yeah, well, I had a discussion with Ed recently, and he took it quite lightly, actually, when I was discussing with him about his performance in Youngam. I think he said something along the lines of, you know, drop the thing in the bin and claim the insurance or something along those lines. I'll find what he's actually said to me and I'll get back to you on that.
But is that his way of trying to get some more prize money? So, you know, it doesn't work that way. That's not how you get prize money in this. You do it by getting results. And there is a result that's not going to happen for the Real team, as Mike Conway has a suspension failure. That's the second one we've seen already. Jose Maria Lopez going out with a suspension issue, and now Mike Conway has come across the same fate there. He's slowing down to a stop on the main straight. So there's a position for Force India right there, Tom, as I think that was Alex Zanardi making his way past, and yeah, it's the right rear of the Real that has let go there. So Mike Conway out of this race, and it's not really been the strongest season so far for the Real team. They're currently lying 10th in the championship. They've got 18 points to their name. They took a double points finish in Malaysia, 5th place and the 7th place there. So there is some speed in that Real, Tom, but not really consistently getting the most out of it at the moment.
I'm struggling to judge on the Real because I can't really tell whether they have a really good car or a really bad one. It seems to be sort of in between the two. But looking at where they are in the standings, teams-wise, they are 10th with 18 points. They didn't score any points last time out, but they did get both cars to the checkered flag. It's a difficult one with Real. I would say they're sort of looking at a midfield place in the team standings by the end of the season as Lucas Di Grassi comes into the pits.
So Di Grassi, the first of the front runners to come into the pits, also in Will Power, Will Stevens and Perry McCarthy. All the graphics are changing around. It's a bit difficult to keep up with it. That's Lucas Di Grassi coming into the pits. He is the first of the top 5 to come in. And coming in at the end of lap 13. So that, to me, Tom, it looks like it's a potential 2-stopper for those cars. You were saying earlier about it maybe being a 1-stop race, given the length of the pit lane. So, in my opinion, that is either going to be a straight-up 2-stop strategy, or maybe an early stop to get track position and go for a longer stint later on.
Perhaps I didn't quite pick up on how many cars pitted, but what I do know, Topher, is that Ed Spencer got in touch with me last week saying, following the round of Yongam in terms of how the team have been doing this season, he said burn down the factory and claim the insurance might go out.
Well, Antonio Fuoco is now coming into the pits. I love Ed, he's got a good sense of humour. Antonio Fuoco comes into the pit lane. Only a couple of laps left in the tank, so this is a scheduled pit stop for the race leader, coming in on lap 15 out of 50. So he has put on 23 laps of fuel though, so this is a straight up 2-stop strategy for the live team. I imagine that Marino Sato will be in on the next lap or maybe the lap after. Suttel's also in, Burt's is in. McNish looks like he's going through for another lap, so he's getting himself back up into top 3. Suttel has gone on for at least another lap. We're now looking at Scott Speed. He's also gone for 23 laps of fuel, so he is on a similar strategy to Antonio Fuoco, our net race leader. There's a lot of activity going on in the pits now. There's at least 6 cars in there at the moment. Alexander Burt's riding on board with at the moment. He's just been in. Daniel Kvyat into pits out of 15th position. And it's all go for the strategy at the moment. It looks like, to me, Tom, the majority of the field is looking at a 2-stop strategy. Sato has continued on for another lap. We'll wait to see when he comes in. Suttel has carried on. So, Suttel, he was falling back earlier. We'll have to wait and see what lap he comes in, Tom, because I'm now starting to think, given his apparent lack of race pace, maybe he's on a 1-stopper.
And I was thinking the same for McNish as well, because McNish has stayed out. We can't just assume that it's going to be the case. We can see Fuoco making his way past Alex Rossi in the LaRousse. That's the difference when it comes to putting new tyres on this track here at Fuji. And it won't be too long before Fuoco gets by Sam Bird as Sato now comes into the pits for live. So I would say that, pretty much the whole field are going to be looking at a 2-stop strategy here, which does surprise me.
Well, Suttel, here he is carrying on for at least another lap. There is Sato going for 20 laps of fuel, so slightly shorter than what Fuoco was doing. So Fuoco came in first out of the 2 this time around, and that to me suggests that at the next round of pit stops, Sato will be the one who is in first. Suttel and McNish both carrying on again as Grosjean pits in from P7. Cristiano D'Amata is now up into P7 there. He hasn't pitted yet. So is he potentially going for a 1-stopper? The Fonmetal team trying something a bit different. Sospiri into the pits. He's now down in P11 as Will Power there trying to get past Martin Brundle in the Force India, and he makes his way through without any issues whatsoever. So after that has all sorted itself out, Suttel in the lead by 1.5 seconds to Alan McNish. Bird up into 3rd place. He hasn't pitted yet either. He's 9.7 off the lead, but got Fuoco right behind him. So Fuoco's still the net race leader as it stands. As Bird gets overtaken by Fuoco, he's wasting no time in getting past this traffic. He's on the fresher tyres. He wants to make it count and get track position here. So Fuoco wasting no time, Tom. He means business today.
Most certainly does, and Sato again held up by Alex Rossi's LaRousse. You can see he's losing some time. So whilst Fuoco managed to get by Sam Bird at the chicane, the same can't be said with Sato, and this is hindering him with the way Rossi's holding him out. So Sato needs to get alongside the American on the start-finish straight, which I'm sure he will do now. There we go, look.
Well, he already pulls out of the slipstream very early on in straight, actually. He got a very good exit out of the final corner. He's already through before they've even reached the start-finish line there. And Alexander Rossi, he's back into the slipstream of the life there, so he wants to try and get that position back again. And as you say, Tom, as Rossi makes the move back, this is holding up Sato dearly. I mean, Sato, he's also looking for his maiden Grand Prix World Series victory today. This is not what he wants. It is definitely advantage for Fuoco at the moment, as he got past the traffic with barely any issue. Sato, he's struggling to get through the traffic at the moment. He's just lost out again to Alexander Rossi in the Larousse. So, at the moment, as I said, Tom, it is very much advantage for Fuoco.
It is very much, and Fuoco's got no traffic to deal with at the moment. He's got a good 6 to 7 second gap behind. Oh, I thought it was a contact there between Brundle and Speed, but we can see Sato down the inside of Rossi. This is probably the better.
A big contact there between the two. Sato not happy with the antics of Rossi there. I kind of feel as though we're going to get a replay of it. I kind of feel as though that Sato wasn't really happy with the way that Rossi got past when Sato clearly has a faster car. So riding on board with Rossi here, we're going to see Sato down the inside. And to me, it looks like Sato has squeezed him towards the edge. It's a bit of a touring car move there, Tom. How did you read that one?
I mean, Sato, I think while Sato was alongside, he needed to leave Rossi a little bit more room.
Scott Speed is out. Sorry, Tom. Scott Speed looks like he's had an incident somewhere. We saw him being craned off to the side of the road. We've got a replay, but we're looking at Marcus Finkelhock. So, a bit of an issue there with the TV direction, maybe. Not really sure what's happened there. But Scott Speed, it was very clear that he had one of his wheels missing, so not really sure what happened there, Tom. We haven't seen it. Did he get contact with someone else? Did he go off all on his own? As it stands, Scott Speed is out.
Yeah, well, I reckon he may have had a problem. He just pulled off to the side and hit the barrier on the way through and ripped the front right wheel off. But we'll have a look a little bit later on anyway. But yeah, that's a bitter blow that for the Modena team. Scott Speed running well, on course for a top 10 finish, but sadly not to be today. So Adrian Suttill continuing to lead, 2 seconds in front of Alan McNish. They've got Antonio Fuoco on the fresher tyres in third place. We can see Dorian Franchitti pulling alongside the sole surviving from the car of Cristiano Di Matta, and that should be 7th place there for the Scotsman. And back to Alan McNish, who's having a good race so far now, and it's become apparent as to why he was so slow at the beginning. He could well go on to a one-stop strategy here, which I personally feel is going to be the better strategy for these guys. So I think if Suttill and McNish are going to win this race, they're going to have to outdo the likes of Fuoco, Sato, Franchitti and Co, who are doing the two stops.
Here is Marino Sato going down the inside. Oh, Alan McNish has spun it! So Alan McNish running to a one-stop strategy. The tyres are going to be wearing, but he has just spun it out of P2. Fuoco goes past. Fuoco says thank you very much. That's another easy position for the Italian. And McNish is back out on circuit again, but that is not going to help his strategy at all. I think he is definitely going to be on the one-stop strategy now. We're on lap 18, about to start 19. So Suttill and McNish going through onto one-stop strategies. McNish getting it all wrong. He wasn't near anyone. It's a complete driver error on his part, Tom. And yeah, that's not really the sort of mistake you want to make if you want to challenge for a podium.
No, of course not. That was a really bad error from McNish, wasn't it? And he can only have himself to blame for pushing too hard there. But you know, through the 13th corners, it's known as, he had the spun. He spun, and now he's got with it all to do. He's got Sato right behind him, who's on the fresher tyres as well. So I think he's going to find it very tough for him to fend off that one.
I have just had confirmation come through, actually, Tom, regarding Scott Speed. It was a simple driver error. He got his wheels onto the grass going through the corner, and it punted him off into the barrier. So a driver error there for the American. That is why he is out of the race. Looking at Daniel Kvyat there, who is all over the back of, I think that's Martin Brundle. Ed Spencer getting in touch through the YouTube live chat, saying he's so close to the points. Please, Martin, for crying out loud, get it to 10th. So Ed Spencer, he's the only team principal at the moment who hasn't scored any points yet, but he wants it. Ed Spencer wants either of his drivers. I don't think he'll care which one it is, whether it's Martin Brundle or Alex Zanardi. He just wants to get some points on the board. And Ed, I know we're not supposed to be biased as commentators, but we are behind you. We'd love to see Force India get some points today. as Daniel Kvyat, very nearly getting up the back of Martin Brundle there, but backing out of it rather sensibly, I think. And Kvyat, I think he's running ahead of his teammate there. He is, so not a good Grand Prix so far for the Pacific team, as Alan McNish there is now being overtaken by Marino Sato down the long start-finish straight. So Sato up into P3, and Frank Kitty pulling across Alexander Rossi there, trying to chop him off and break his momentum. Rossi going down the inside to take P6 off of the Scotsman. So some nice little battles going on here, Tom. Plenty of action throughout the field. As it stands, Sutil still at the head of the field and leading, but with a pit stop to make. So this is becoming a fascinating Grand Prix, Tom. We've got the strategic battle between Sutil and Fuoco for the win. And we've also got plenty of on-track action. This has been a cracker so far.
It has been, and Antonio Fuoco took nearly 2 seconds out of Sutil's lead on the last lap alone. That's the difference actually with the new tyres. And you could just see Frankie C pulling alongside Rossi. Hopefully he'll keep it clean, unlike Sato did earlier on. Pull goes to the inside, and that's a clean manoeuvre there. So slam dunk manoeuvre there for Franchitti. Sunbird is next up.
I think this is undoubtedly Dario Franchitti's finest performance of the season so far. He did take pole position in Adelaide, but unfortunately retired from that race with a loose wheel. Didn't have all of the opportunities to get the positions there. As that is Roman Grosjean getting down the inside of Brundle. So Brundle's lost out to both Pacifics in this race. He's now down in 16th position. Carter McColeman's team of Kvyat and Grosjean now both in the top 15. But yeah, as I was saying about Franchitti, this is undoubtedly his finest performance so far. Running up in P6, it would be good if he could bring home some points, not just for himself, but for the HRT team as well. Because don't forget, Tom, HRT was one of the pre-season favourites for the title here.
They were. I was just looking at Sutil's pace at the moment. As you can see, Fuoco closing up behind him now. It was 2 seconds when they crossed the start-finish line. So I think by the next time they get onto the pit straight, Fuoco is going to be within striking distance of getting past the HRT. But Lucas Di Grossi in 10th place at the moment behind D'Amata, who's still yet to stop so far. So the drivers who have yet to stop are Sutil, McNish, Bird, Alex Rossi, and Cristiano D'Amata, I believe.
A bit of a mistake there for Adrian Sutil. He's on much more worn tyres than Antonio Fuoco behind him. Sutil on the one-stop strategy, as we have said, and his tyres are going to be screaming out in pain there. Antonio Fuoco now in the slipstream of the HRT, and he is undoubtedly going to retake the lead here. And yet he uses the power of that life there. Both of these cars actually have very good horsepower. They're two of the most powerful cars on the grid. But Fuoco making his fresher rubber work there as he got the traction out of final corner. Sutil's coming back down the inside again, is he? Fuoco holds on around the outside, finding the grip off of the apex of Fuoco brilliantly through into the lead of this race again. So both of these drivers still have one more pit stop to make, but Fuoco now into the lead with track position again as D'Amata concedes position there to Lucas Di Grassi as Rossi gets a little bit crossed up into turn 1 as well. So, and D'Amata is back past Di Grassi actually, just going through into a shot there.
Yeah, we saw it again from last year's race where we saw plenty of drivers who, perhaps on older tyres, being able to get back into the slipstream. The slipstream's very effective around Fuji. So it's taken Antonio Fuoco 8 laps from his pit stop to get back into the lead of this race, and that's without Sutil, McNish, Bird and co pitting.
So this is absolutely not a done deal yet. Antonio Fuoco is looking to be in the pound seat as Rossi comes under attack from Alex Bird and verts around the outside there of the LaRousse. A brilliant move there from the experienced Austrian. We're going to get another look at that. So he tried to go down the inside into the chicane, but Rossi shutting the door on that one, or at least he tried to, as Wirtz held on around the outside there. A brilliant move from Alexander Wirtz in the Leighton House, and he is up into P7. A fantastic move there for Chris Cavney's team, currently running in P7 and P12. Now Leighton House currently second in the standings, and they have designs on getting promotion into League 1 top. We spoke to Chris Cavney before. He doesn't mind so much if he wins a League 2 title or not. His main focus is getting within that top 3.
Well, would he be saying that by the time we get to the penultimate round of the season, he's already got promotion. Well, I'm sure he'll be looking the opportunity of winning the league if these Batenhouse guys do continue their fine form. I have to say that LaRousse have been strong so far this season. They got a 1-2 early in the season in Taupo with Rossi and Callum Ilott. We haven't seen too much of Callum Ilott in this race. He's been off the pace so far in this one. But that doesn't mean to say LaRousse won't have a good season. It's just one of those days where they're just having quite the car set up for a track like Fuji.
So let's talk about Callum Ilott, shall we, Tom? As if you cast your mind back to the season opening race in Taupo, Callum Ilott, he won that race. He was our first winner of the season. And we're thinking he was possibly going to be fighting for the championship all the way and always be up there and scoring points. But as it stands, Tom, those 25 points that Callum Ilott got as Lucas Di Grassi gets past D'Amato there for P10, those 25 points that Callum Ilott scored in Taupo, Tom, as it stands, they're his only points of the season so far. He hasn't scored a single point since then.
Yeah, I don't really know how his racecraft is panning out. Clearly his racecraft is not quite there at the moment. He hasn't quite got the car underneath him over the last few rounds, and he hasn't done so here whilst his teammate Alex Rossi's continuing his fine race so far. But if we maybe get a few more retirements, he could put himself in play for a top 10 finish, but that's the best he can achieve. As Will Stevens gets by the Von Mattel of D'Amato to go up into 10th place, and D'Amato I think is going to try and get back on him, like he did so with Di Grassi not so long ago, and he has done.
So D'Amato is looking very racy here. The Von Mattel, it's by no means the most powerful car on the grid. It is one of the most reliable, it must be said, but not really the most powerful. But D'Amato, he's going for it. He's had a massive battle with Di Grassi over the past few laps, and he's now trying to keep Will Stevens behind him. So D'Amato, he knows that he's in one of the slowest cars in the field, but he's not going down without a fight. He's running in P10 here on a one-stop strategy, and at the moment could possibly score some points for the Von Mattel team. We still have a long way to go as Will Stevens, he gets down the inside of the Brazilian, and D'Amato, he's trying to hold it around the outside, which becomes the inside, and he does it, does he? No, Will Stevens, this is some brilliant battle here from Will Stevens and Cristiano D'Amato. Stevens finally gets a position. This has been some fantastic wheel-to-wheel racing so far in the Fuji Grand Prix. Will Power is now up the back of Cristiano D'Amato there. So D'Amato, he is looking very feisty at the moment. I think he wants to try and maybe encourage either Ewan Gale to put some more money into the power of the car, or maybe he's trying to put himself into the driver market for Season 3 and get himself a better car, Tom.
And I was just looking to see, there's the Leighton House of Will Power going past D'Amato. Will D'Amato tries ever so sly tactic and get into the slipstream and get back through on Power? I think he may well do, and he has done. So D'Amato, no slow coach or no pushover here in Fuji. He's loving it.
This has been an absolutely exceptional performance so far from Cristiano D'Amato. Clearly does not have the power advantage in that Von Mattel, but he is giving it everything he's got. We now cut away to ride on board with Marino Sato. And a bit of a lock-up there from Ilott, who we were talking about a couple of laps ago, down in P16. And yeah, once again, Callum Ilott not really having the best time of it so far. At the last race in Yongan, he was running, I think, within the top 10 before he was forced into the pits with a brake issue, and that put pay to any potential chance of getting some points for himself and LaRousse. And today, Tom, just not on the pace, it seems.
No, so, and just I was looking at Sato's pace as he approaches Suthill. I think there's going to be a change of second place here, and we're just ending lap 25 and going on to lap 26. And this is how long it's taken for the live cars to get back into first and second, and that's before Suthill's even pitted.
So it is looking very good for the live team as it stands. They have made up the advantage of being on the fresher rubber. So now Fuoco, Sato and Suthill all have one pit stop to make. Sospiri getting crossed up out of the exits of the corner there. And Sospiri is another driver who's been, how to put this politely, he's not really been on it, has he, so far, Tom? He did pick up some points in Adelaide. Just checking where he finished. He finished in P5 in that race, but a minute and a quarter off of the lead. And the only reason he really scored points in that race, Tom, was because of how attritional he was. He was one of only 6 classified finishes in that race. And there have been talks actually recently, Tom. Lewis Bassendale, the team principal of Andrea Moda, he's been looking into the possibility of replacing Sospiri. And from what I hear, Tom, he's sniffing around at a few of the other teams, trying to see if he can maybe get someone's reserve driver.
Well, there's plenty out there. I mean, he's got, he's got to try and remain as loyal as he can with what he's got. There's a reason why he's brought these drivers in the first place, because otherwise, why would you be thinking of these drivers before you put them into a car? It makes no sense to me. We've seen it a lot so far this season where team managers haven't been happy with drivers' performances, but they recruited them, Topher. Let's not forget that. They were the ones that recruited these drivers, and clearly they've been growing impatient with how they've been performing.
Well, possibly the least impatient of them all as Lucas Di Grassi challenges Rossi for P8 there. Possibly the least patient of all of them will be Michael Gillespie, the team principal of the Midland team. He started off the season with Nicola Larini in one of his cars, and Tom, he replaced him after one race. He didn't really give him much of a chance there, as D'Amata comes in for his one and only pit stop there at the end of lap 26. But yeah, Tom, some team principals clearly less patient than others. Michael Gillespie bringing in Tiago Monteiro to replace Nicola Larini after just one race. A few other driver changes across the way as well. Brundle moved over from the Life team to Force India, and Andrew Sampson, he was the one who made the decision to get rid of Martin Brundle, but he's now got two fast young drivers in his car. Could he have potentially been as high up in the order had he kept Brundle in the car, do you think?
I think so. I think it was very harsh of him getting rid of Brundle after Taupo giving his excellent drive there. And, Brundle's in the deep end with Force India, who are struggling. Really struggling.
One of the things about the Grand Prix World Series, it's not the drivers who make the decisions. They don't have any say in the contracts. It is all down to the team managers. They make the decisions as to who drives in their car. So Martin Brundle being dropped by the Life team after just one race. Martin Brundle, he finished 4th in the opening race in Taupo. It was a very good performance. But yeah, he was immediately dropped and picked up by Force India. It's very much the draconian nature of the Grand Prix World Series. Every single one of the team principals is competitive. They all want to win. And if they feel as though their driver is not going to get the job done, they do have every right to get rid of them.
Yeah, that's how cruel the Grand Prix World Series can be. I'm just looking at Tsunoda here. How close is Franco coming onto the back markers? He's still some way away yet, so he may not even get close to them before he comes in for his second pit stop, which won't be too far away.
So looking at Marino Sato there in P2, he's 6.3 seconds off the lead of his teammate Antonio Fuoco, as Sospiri is engaging in a battle there with one of the Force Indias. I think that is Martin Brundle there that he's fighting with. It's not for points at the moment, this is for the lower positions in the order. So Sospiri, I think, losing out to Brundle there. So we were just talking about Brundle there, as Sospiri looks down the inside but doesn't quite get anywhere near enough to make a move there on Brundle. So Brundle, he could potentially have been a front runner had he been able to stick with the Life team this season. But as it was, Andrew Sampson, he took the decision to drop Brundle. Also dropping Mark Blundell from the team as well. He started off the season with both Mark and Martin in that team. He's now got a completely new driver lineup of Antonio Fuoco and Marino Sato. And Tom, some of these team principals, they make decisions based on what's happening at the time. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. But in this particular instance, Tom, Andrew Sampson must be absolutely loving life at the moment, if you pardon the pun.
I mean, he's relishing the opportunity now of leading the field, isn't he? Looking at where Life are, they are third in the team standings. They'd make a giant leap towards LaRousse. They'll jump ahead of Lakenhouse, but I think they'll just be short of LaRousse in the Constructors' Championship. But nevertheless, they are really looking very good. Well, thinking about it, they may well jump LaRousse, because Rossi in 9th and Isle at 15th, so Rossi would only get 2 points from it. The Live team would get, well, probably 45, the maximum 45, given their pace throughout this one. So, we could see Life in the lead of the team standings by the end of this.
There are still quite a few laps left to go here in Fuji. And now, Here's a driver on screen, Tom. Valentino Rossi. We spoke earlier about Lewis Bassendale wanting to potentially change Sospiri. He's already made one driver change this season. He started off with Taki Inoue at the team, but he's replaced him with this guy here, Valentino Rossi, eligible for the Grand Prix World Series by virtue of having done official tests for Scuderia Ferrari. And it was an interesting one, Tom, because this is a guy who is a legend in the world of motorbikes, won the MotoGP title, I can't even remember how many times, as Alan McNish pits out of P6, as does Bird out of P9. When Valentino Rossi came on board, Tom, we weren't really sure just how good he's going to be. Like, could he cut it in the world of Formula 1? But in his debut race, last time out in Yongan, he scored points. He came home in 8th position, so an inspired decision by Lewis Bassendale there.
It proved to be a good decision, and I think with Taki Inoue, with all due respect, he's a brilliant guy, but he just couldn't cut it in the Grand Prix World Series. He wasn't able to cut it for the Forza team last year, and he had a tough time of it in the Andrea Moda. But for Valentino Rossi to be given the opportunity was a great decision by Lewis Bassendale, which is not very often I would say that to a lot of team managers when it comes to replacing drivers.
So we've had some pit stops there. Some of the drivers who were on the one-stop strategy have now come in. Sam Bird and Alan McNish making their pit stops. There's Will Power getting it all wrong into the chicane there. He's currently running in P8 as we are on lap 30 out of 50 here in Fuji. Adrian Suttle in P3. He's just coming to the pits now. Just as I was about to say, he hasn't pitted yet. He goes and does it. Adrian Suttle comes into the pits out of P3 for his one and only pit stop. So he was hoping to make a one-stop strategy work by spending less time in the pits. But such is the pace of the Life duo, they've gone and basically nullified that strategy for Suttle. And he's down into P7 now on the graphic. We'll have to wait to see where he is in relation to Will Power. There goes Power into P7. But yeah, HRT and John Monroe thinking a one-stop strategy might be a good shout to get a victory here today, Tom. But the Life team, they just basically said no, you're not having it. They've just been that quick that they completely nullified the one-stop strategy option.
Yeah, and Suttle will be joining in 9th place now for HRT, but at least he'll be on fresher tyres than he was before, so he's got an opportunity to try and close in on Froco and Sato a little bit, but I think 3rd is probably his best bet in this race now.
And here is Alexander Rossi trying to get past one of the Andrea Modas. I believe that is Vincenzo Sospiri. So struggling a little bit to get past the Andrea Moda on the straights actually, but making it work down into the braking zone and through the corner. Here is Dario Franchitti still running in P3. Now that Suttle has pitted, he's up into a potential podium position there. Wirtz is in 4th, ahead of Di Grassi in 5th position. Looking down the rest of the order, Will Stevens in P6, Will Power in 7th, and then we have McCarthy, Suttle and Kvyat in P10 for the Pacific. Now Kvyat, he was one of the drivers that we were almost certain, Tom, we were so convinced that he would be one of the main protagonists for the title battle. But it just hasn't happened for Daniel Kvyat. If you cast your mind back to the Vancouver Grand Prix that we had, the non-championship race to start off the season, he was dominant there. Well, right up until the point that he span into the barrier and broke his rear wing. But up until that point, he was a country mile faster than anyone else, Tom. But since we got into the actual points-paying championship races, we've barely seen anything of him. I don't really know what's going on with the Pacific team there.
No, it's a strange one, isn't it? I mean, we said that Kvyat and Grosjean weren't really going to be fighting for victory or for a podium, but to try and get into the points, and just Kvyat and Grosjean are 10th and 11th at the moment. But it just depends how strategy plays out, and clearly the two-slot strategy is the more effective one here. Much to my surprise, you can see D'Amata pulling alongside what looks like the Real. Yes, it is a Real. Of Neil Johnny, I think that is, isn't it?
Yes, that is Neil Johnny. That's a little allude to our earlier confusion as to some of the liveries there. There's a very similar looking one there in the LaRousse. That is Alexander Rossi trying to get past the sole remaining Marcus Winkelhock. Our first retirement of the race was the other Euro run of Jose Maria Lopez. His suspension failed. I think it was on lap 3. It's very early on as Franchitti is into pits out of P3. That will be his last stop of the race. We'll have to wait and see how he gets on fresher tyres. So Wirtz is up into P3 and Di Grassi into P4. So just going through the retirements, we haven't had that many retirements actually. It's just been good pure racing today. So Lopez, the first of those with a suspension issue. Enrique Benoldi, his gearbox packed up on him on lap 10, I believe it was, if I remember correctly. Mike Conway, his right rear suspension collapsed, and then we had Scott Speed crashing his Modena into the barriers. So only 4 retirements so far, Tom. And there were some fears earlier on in the season, especially after Adelaide, that this might end up being a bit of a championship of attrition, but we've put Adelaide behind us now. We're getting on with the racing, and so far we're starting to get a little bit more reliable as the season goes on.
Yeah, well, the team managers know the nature of the Grand Prix World Series anyway, with regards to how quick the car needs to be and how much reliability needs to go into it. Clearly, so far, the live seems to have got the best balance possible. See Perry McCarthy riding on board with him, ahead of Adrian Sutil, who's recently stopped, and Marino Sato's in.
So Sato into the pits. We said earlier on that he would be the first of the lives to take their second pit stop by going for a little bit of a shorter fuel load. So Sato in at the start of lap 34, so there'll be about 16 laps worth of fuel to the end of the Grand Prix World up in second position, and Fuoco trying to get past Alex Zanardi there. Zanardi not really getting out of the way of the race leader. He doesn't really have to. We don't have any blue flags in this championship. It's completely down to the drivers to sort themselves out. I think Fuoco might have made the move on Alex Zanardi now. As we look at Adrian Sutil, who has now pitted. He's on his one-stop strategy and on his way through. Well, I thought he might have been on his way through into P5, but McCarthy using the power of that Coloni to keep 5th position. So Sutil not really getting the speed down straight, even with the slipstream. So Sutil on a bit of a heavier fuel load than those around him, thanks to his one-stop strategy. It's not paying off at the moment, Tom, but could potentially pay dividends later on. As Sutil goes wide there. So he tried to go around the outside of the Coloni, but he said no. McCarthy was having absolutely none of it. And Sutil, he's now right back up on the Coloni again. He will be furious with that one, Tom.
It was very rude, wasn't it? He did look rude there from McCarthy. I think it looks quite late from him, so I wonder if the stewards may have a look at that and maybe give the black and white flag to McCarthy really for dangerous driving. But but he was back in full position with him anyway. But you definitely don't want to be seeing that. I think Sutil's got by McCarthy anyway. But nevertheless, you don't want to be seeing cars going wheel to wheel like that. I think it's called a 100R or something like that.
Well, we saw that earlier on with the other Coloni, actually, on lap 1. Actually, with Alexander Wirtz, who's just come into the pit. So Alan McNish, on the opening lap, he forced Alexander Wirtz into a similar off-roading experience there at that particular corner. But he was also able to hold on to the position. Andrew Sampson's asking us to stop talking about his reliability. I mean, the commentator's curse is not intentional, Andrew. You know as well as we do, Andrew. It is a very obvious thing within the Grand Prix World Series that if you have a powerful car, it will often come at the expense of reliability. As I think that might have been one of the Andrea Modas trying to get past Di Grassi before coming into the pits there. I think that might have been Valentino Rossi. So, okay, Andrew, you know what? We will not talk about your reliability anymore. You've got a 1-2 at the moment. Fuoco in the lead ahead of Marino Sato. 37.6 second lead, but Fuoco is yet to pit, and he does right now. So we'll have to wait and see whether Life can make a good pit stop out of this. We're currently riding on board with Alan McNish, trying to get past Roman Grosjean, trying to find the inside line and not getting it this time around. McNish rather sensibly backing out of that one. Grosjean up into P7. He's been a little bit quiet this race so far. We haven't seen a lot of the Frenchman. And this was a guy who took victory at the Sepang Grand Prix, so there is speed from Grosjean and the Pacific team, but not really getting the most out of it so far. He's up in P7 at the moment, but I believe he's got to make another pit stop with Alan McNish behind him on the one-stop strategy. McNish on the fresher tyres, and he's trying to get past it. And a little bit of a moment there for Sam Bird, I think that was, getting all up on the curb and getting locked up there. Bird currently running in P11 as Will Power pulls into the pits out of P4. Kvyat is also into the pits as well, so he will be dropping out of the top 10, maybe hoping to make his tyres work to get into points later on. And we're now riding on board with Callum Ilott as he comes in for his second and last pit stop.
So it doesn't look as though Ilott is going to be in the frame for points, but Sato's taking quite a lot out of Froco's lead on the fresher tyres. They came in a few laps before, but I would think that Froco is going to start getting up to speed again. We'll keep an eye on the times as well between those two.
Andrew Sampson, we said we'd stop talking about your reliability. That hidden turbo you've just mentioned in the live chat, I mean, sometimes I don't know whether they're being serious, and it could be one of those situations where he does have a hidden turbo, but he's just trying to throw us off the scent a bit by being a little bit flippant about it, you know? So maybe something for the stewards to look at. We'll have to see if they want to investigate the car afterwards. But yeah, riding on board with Antonio Fuoco, who has come into the pits and is out again in the lead. It's a 2.9 second advantage over his teammate Marino Sato. So Fuoco now on 2 laps worth of fresher tyres than Sato. The gap's up to 3.1 again. So Fuoco now definitely in the pound seat and on the last leg towards his maiden Grand Prix World Series victory. We still have 13 laps left to go here in the League 2 race at Fuji as Alan McNish blasting down. Oh, I think Grosjean was trying to come into the pits there. And yes, he has. So McNish was getting down the inside of Grosjean there when the Frenchman wanted to come into the pits. That could have been an almighty crash had there been any sort of different timing on that. But Grosjean, he is in for his last pit stop. 16 laps of fuel that will definitely take him to the end, and he drops out of the top 10 there. Cristiano Di Matta, he's running to the one-stop strategy, as we know, Tom. He's just gone through into P12, and there is a possibility of points there for Fonmetal, isn't there, Tom?
They really could do with that, and Neil Yanni holding up the race leader now of Antonio Fuoco. This is not going to do his hopes of victory any good if he keeps performing like that. I wonder if the stewards may have a word with him afterwards, because he did hold him up for quite some time there.
We'll have to probably look back at that and see just how long he was behind the race leader there. Now looking at Adrian Suttel, I love this on-board shot. Looking straight into the driver's visor, you can tell how much they are concentrating. Suttel trying to make a one-stopper work today, but completely outwitted by the pace of the live cars. And if they've been a little bit more on par with the live cars, Tom, I believe the live does have the most powerful engine out of the lot. But if there's a bit more parity between the two, maybe Suttel could have made it work. But of course, Tom, it's all hypothetical at this stage.
Of course, and McNish is doing a fine job actually in the Cologne, despite that spin he had earlier on. I don't know if he needs to come in again. He probably doesn't do. Can I just go back to the point about the pit lane thing?
Yeah, of course you can.
That looked really abrupt, where Grosjean and others have been coming into the pit there, because it was quite a drastic drop in speed, where if there was a car already alongside to their right, it could have caused an almighty shunt.
I think we can count our blessings on that one, that it didn't happen. Grosjean, as it is, he came into the pits and he's now out in P15. He's back behind his teammate Daniel Kvyat. So no points as it stands at the moment for the Pacific team. But maybe we could see a few more retirements towards the end of this race. There is still 12 laps to go here in Fuji, Japan, in the League 2 race. A quick run through of the order with all of the pit stops now having played out. There is your race leader, Antonio Fuoco, coming up to traffic. He'll want to make sure he navigates that sensibly. Marino Sato making it a life 1-2 at the moment, 3.3 seconds off the lead of his teammate. Adrian Suttel heading a HRT 3-4 ahead of Dario Franchitti with his finest drive of the championship so far. Alan McNish, despite a spin earlier, as you said, Tom, still running quite well up in P5. Alexander Wurz, he's in P6 in a Leighton House. They want to bring home some points for the team. Lucas de Grassi running well for the Zaxby in P7 ahead of teammate Sam Bird. So both Zaxbys running 7th and 8th at the moment. A good job there by Mike Smith and his team. Will Stevens in P9 and Alexander Rossi in P10.
Sato seems to be dropping back. It looks like Neil Johnny came out of the pits on his fresher rubber, which could well explain why there is a drop of pace between Yanni and Sato. But either way, Yanni should be moving out of the way of Sato as Sato continues his pursuit of Antonio Fuoco, who continues to lead. Barry McCarthy getting alongside Di Matta, and at last he gets by the Von Mittel, and up into 12th place he goes.
So we were talking about the possibility of Di Matta maybe making his way into the points in this race with the strategy that he's on, but as it is, he's actually falling back. He's now down into 13. A little bit of a freeze there on the broadcast. It looks to be fine now. Looking at Vincenzo Sospiri, a lap down he's just gone. Fuoco makes his way past the Italian. Suspiri running in P19. And Will Stevens getting a bit crossed up there into the chicane, but he keeps his Modena facing in the right direction. So 4 drivers out and 4 drivers lapped. Suspiri, Brundle, Gianni and Zanardi both lapped down. Speed, Conway, Benoldi and Lopez all out of this race. It's been very good for attrition so far, Tom. Usually at these kind of races, as we saw last time in Fuji actually in Season 1, this circuit can be a little bit of the one of the more attritional ones, but so far it's been really good for reliability.
It has, and I think the teams will be thinking about, great, we've got the cars to the end, now we just need to push forward and try and achieve a better result. I'm sure there's quite a lot of jealousy around the live team in terms of how they've done this weekend. We're just looking at Sasa trying to lap the Force India of Martin Brundle. He's losing time. I mean, he's well clear of Adrian Suttle in third, but that's not going to do his chances of catching Froco any favours, but I think he's going to find it difficult anyway to approach his team members. We're just looking at Alex Zanardi just locking up into the chicane in the Force India. And he's got Adrian Suttle a lap ahead of him in third place.
So, we are on lap 40 out of 50. We are nearing the conclusion of the League 2 race of the Fuji Grand Prix. Marino Sato there, putting a lap on Martin Brundle. So he's made his way through traffic. At this moment in time, it looks like Life are set for a 1-2 finish. Just play it sensible, be sensible in the traffic, don't take any unnecessary risks. Andrew Sampson probably biting his nails right down to the bone there on the pit wall. He's in a position to get a really good haul of points today, and actually with Fuoco currently holding pole position points and the fastest lap points as well. Tom, this could end up being a perfect score for the Life team, and looking at the drivers and teams tables here, I think that if Life does indeed come away with a perfect score as Grosjean locks up there, I think Life might end up in the lead of the championship. So the LaRousse team, Ilott is not going to be scoring any points today. Rossi's only going to pick up 1 point in P10 there. So I'm trying to do some quick bits of maths here, and I think Life, if it does indeed finish this way, will jump from third to first in the team standings.
Yeah, it looks that way, and the only thing that could possibly change it is if either Rossi gets up the order or something mechanical gremlin-wise happens to the live cars. Not them trying to jinx it, obviously, but...
No, we did say to Andrew Sampson we stopped talking about the reliability, so let's move on from that. You're enjoying a 1-2 run to the line at the moment. We'll let you enjoy the last 10 laps without mentioning the reliability. Here is Marino Sato now making a lap on Vincenzo Sospiri there. So the Life team, they've got 18 seconds over Adrian Sutil in third position. It has been all about Life so far in the Fuji Grand Prix as Will Power gets it wrong through the chicane there, gets the tyres all locked up, and Power's on the brink of points himself. And Power, he was drafted in to replace Robert Wickens at the Leighton House team, and he took a podium on debut. He was absolutely fantastic when he came into the series in Yongam, and today, potentially on for points, but he'll need to close in the gap on his IndyCar rival Alexander Rossi there. He's still got 8 laps left to do it. There is your race leader, Antonio Fuoco, putting more laps on some of the back markers. I think that is the Eurobron of Winkelhock. He's now made his way past. Looking down further through the order, Power in P11, like I said, McCarthy's in P12, having dispatched D'Amata, and D'Amata now has Daniel Kvyat going us back of him, and just as I point that out, Kvyat makes a move into P13. We're riding on board with him momentarily there, with Kvyat getting up into P13, D'Amata now the meat in a Pacific sandwich. So we were talking about D'Amata earlier potentially being good for some points there, but in the long run, Tom, it looks like that their apparent lack of pace is now showing through.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, I've misread what you said there, Topher.
So, we're talking earlier about D'Amata possibly looking good for some points on the one-stop strategy, but now actually falling down through the order.
Yeah, I mean, D'Amata, we can't say we were expecting him to finish in the points, but yeah, it's another tricky day for Von Mittel, but at least D'Amata's up there in 14th ahead of the Pacific, so yeah, it's another hard day's work for him, so we just hope to see that Von Mittel can make inroads next time out. Just looking to see where the next race will be. It's in India, the Bud International Circuit, I think it is, in India.
No, it's not the Bud International Circuit, it's actually the Chennai Circuit that we're going to, mixing it up a little bit here. There is a possibility that we could end up at the Bud Circuit at the end of the season, Tom, for the Champions Festival. The plan is that the top 13 teams across both leagues, not just in one league, but across both leagues, the top 13 teams with the most points within both leagues will enter into the Champions Festival. And it's going to be a bit of a special one, that one, because the plan is, Tom, those top 13 teams, they will all be taking part in a draw to have a Formula 1 World Champion assigned to their team. And the usual rule that we have in terms of criteria with the Grand Prix World Series is that the drivers must not currently be in Formula 1. They must also be living. That's another criteria that we have. But for the Champions Festival, there's going to be a one-off special where any driver who has won the Formula 1 World Championship, it doesn't matter if it's Lewis Hamilton or Michael Schumacher or Jochen Rindt or Jim Clark or whoever, they will all be available to take part in the Champions Festival. And how will the drivers and teams be decided? Well, the top 13 teams across both leagues in terms of points will be entered into the Champions Festival, and then the drivers who will be at their individual teams, all done by draw. It is a complete lottery as to who will drive where. And Tom, with only 13 teams, 26 seats, 33 Formula 1 champions to date, some people might miss out on that, so we could potentially not have Lewis Hamilton in there.
Well, who would not want to have Lewis Hamilton in their team?
Oh, we've got a blow up there. That looks to be a Real. It is. It's Neil Jarni. So we're only a handful of laps from the end. It is a water leak for the Real. So the car undergoing a lot of stress in this race, as are most of the teams. But the Jarni and his Real saying, nope, enough's enough. And he pulls over to the side of the circuit. Neil Jarni is our 5th retirement of the League 2 Fuji Grand Prix. A water leak for him. He wasn't really in a position to challenge for any points anyway, but that's still not what Ed Hunter and the Real team would have wanted out of this. Mike Conway now their only representative.
So was that 2 races in the last 3 that both cars have failed to finish?
Something like that. Yeah, they haven't really had the best reliability, has the Real team. But, it's one of the pitfalls that we have with the Grand Prix World Series. Ed Hunter and the Real team, they haven't really been able to get the results to get the prize money to upgrade their cars. Which, you kind of want to put money into the power of the cars at the start of the season to make sure that you're up there fighting for the win and challenging for the prize money. But if you put more money into power, you're taking away the potential for developing the reliability. It's such a fine balance to find. We've said this so many times, Tom. And some team principals finding a better balance between the two than others. As Marino Sato, he now dispatches the Europe run of Marcus Winkelhock to put a lap on the German. Here is Adrian Suzel in 3rd place, looking good for another podium this season. He's 21.3 seconds off the lead as it stands, but 3rd place, I think he and John Monroe will be more than happy with that, Tom.
Most certainly so, and I think the HRT to get some points on the board as well with both cars, and with Frankie T especially. Would you? I don't know what you think. Would he be your driver of the day?
I think there's quite a few drivers who we could put down for driver of the day here, but I think if I was to choose one, I'd probably say Antonio Fuoco. Yeah, he's got what is apparently the fastest car at the moment, but he still had to go and get the job done, and at the moment he is doing it in a dominant fashion. He's 6 seconds ahead of his teammate, who has to be said, those two, fairly similar in terms of raw pace actually. They're both very fast drivers, both quite successful in the junior categories. Andrew Sampson bringing them both on board to get some youth on his side, and that's paying off. But Fuoco, 6 seconds ahead of his teammate, he's been absolutely dominant so far today. So yeah, I think I'd probably put Fuoco down as my driver of the day.
We're just looking at willpower. You can smell that championship point that's currently occupied by Alex Rossi ahead of him. And he can make a move on up in the straight. He has been closing him down drastically as willpower the last few laps, so I think he's going to get the move done here, Topher.
Well, he is indeed going through down the inside of his IndyCar rival. He already gets the move done even before the braking zone. And is Alexander Rossi going to come back at him? No, not in this time. Rossi concedes that position is gone. Chris Cavani is going to be happy about that one, with both of his Leighton Houses now in the top 10. Leighton House occupying 2nd in the championship going into this race. That will, of course, all change when we reach the conclusion of this race. Chris Cavani, he will be very encouraged to have both Alexander Wurz and Will Power running in the top 10 here in Fuji. His aim, to get up to League 1 for Season 3.
Sato 6.3 seconds before he crosses the line. It's now 6.4, so the gap continuing to increase for Furuko, but I'm sure the Japanese fans will be very happy with Sato's performance in Topher. I don't think they can complain too much.
Oh, absolutely, and don't forget, we have another Sato racing in the League 1 race later, but Sato's not the only Japanese driver who's going to be in that race. Takuma Sato, who is currently the championship leader going into this Fuji event. We've also got Kamui Kobayashi, the winner of the season opening race in Taupo in League 1, and also Kazuki Nakajima. And just quickly looking at the grid for that race later on, we'll bring that grid to you in full later on. Kamui Kobayashi is third for the race later on, so that's very good for the Japanese fans there. Kazuki Nakajima is in P14 for that race, but rather disappointingly, Takuma Sato, championship leader as we said, P22 on the grid for later on, so he's got it all to do at a circuit which he took pole position at last season. That's a race that is happening later on. We're currently focusing on the last few laps of the League 2 race here in Fuji. Furuko looking good. There he is. He's looking good for his maiden Grand Prix World Series victory. He still has a handful of laps yet to go. Andrew Sampson, he's there on the pit wall, biting his nails furiously. He's looking forward to bringing home a 1-2 finish. And if Furuko or Sato does bring home the fastest lap points, I think Furuko has it at the moment. If they do indeed get to the end with a 1-2 finish and the fastest lap, that is a perfect score for the Life team. And here is Will Stevens, the second lap in a row. He's tried to get past Sam Bird out that corner, but Sam Bird shutting the door rather firmly there on his compatriot. Both Zaxby's having a very good run here today. Degrassi's in P7 and Bird is in P8. So they're both running very well for Mike Smith's team, and it looks like it's going to be a double points finish for him. Here is Alexander Wurz in the Leighton House, the Leeds Leighton House in P6.
So alongside McNish.
Oh, he is alongside McNish. I didn't spot that from his onboard. Wurz down the inside of Alan McNish into P5. So that is even more points for Chris Cavani potentially. We are on lap 48 out of 50. 2.5 laps left to run in this League 2 race. McNish trying to stay with the Austrian there, but I think Wurz probably on the better tyres at the moment. Don't forget, McNish was on the one-stop strategy. He's on old tyres now, whereas Wurz was on a two-stop strategy. So his tyres quite a few laps fresher than the Scotsman behind him. So I think that is definitely position gone for McNish. But P6, Tom, still a good result for the Coloni team.
Very good result for Coloni. I mean, McCarthy would love to be in the points as well. He is less than 5 seconds off Rossi actually, so it'll be interesting to see if he can close that gap down. He probably won't do, to be honest with you. But it's been a fine drive from McNish. He was slow at the beginning of the race from 4th on the grid, and then it became apparent later on as to why he was going that slow, and then making the one-stop strategy work for McNish. And that's including that spin he had earlier on. So I think he would have been, for me, I think he would have been in 5th, maybe 4th.
Quite possibly. I actually forgot before he said that, Tom. I forgot he had the spin earlier because he's been driving so well today up there in P6. I forgot that he had that spin earlier on. So maybe even he could have been split in the HRTs in P4 there. He's only 5 seconds off the back of Frank Kitty. But that's one of the things about the drivers here. If they make a mistake, they are going to pay the price. So McNish in P6 as is. He's got a good gap to Degrassi in P7. So I think he's quite safe to finish in the top 6 now. We are halfway around the penultimate lap of the League 2 race here at Fuji. Antonio Furuko with a 7.9 second gap over his teammate there. Marino Sato in second position. There is Alan McNish, who we were just talking about. A little bit of a lock-up there. So I think his tyres maybe getting to the end of their shelf life now. So he'll just want to make sure he gets to the end of the Grand Prix. HRT set for a good points-paying day with 3rd and 4th for Sutil and Frank Kitty there. Wurz in P5, that will be 10 points for himself and for Leighton House to add to Power's 1 point in P10. Degrassi and Bird, Zach Speed set for a double points finish, and Will Stevens doing a fairly solid race. He's been a bit anonymous in this race, save for a battle earlier on, I think it was with Sam Bird. We are now on to the final lap here in Fuji as Will Stevens makes the move on Sam Bird.
No, it's got a problem. It's got a problem.
Bird has a problem. So it was looking good for a double points finish for Saxby, but it looks like Sam Bird might now have a bit of a problem. We're looking at Will Stevens. We really want to be looking at Sam Bird to see what the problem is with him there. He's now under threat from Will Power. There he is, riding on board with the Australian here, and surely he's going to steal P9 off of Sam Bird here down the straight. Tom, talk us through this one.
Yep, so Power with the power, alongside Sam Bird. I had to throw it in there, Topher, I had to throw it in. But yeah, it's alongside Bird. I think this is going to be a change of position. What a disastrous last few corners for Sam Bird. That was a real shame for him. He had a good race as well.
So maybe a problem developing in the closing stages there for Sam Bird. We will have to wait and see if anything comes of the Zach speed. But meanwhile, here is the man who has dominated proceedings today. He's led from pole position, and he's going to take his first ever Grand Prix World Series victory. Andrew Sampson, enjoy this one, because Antonio Fuoco crosses the line to win the League 2 Fuji Grand Prix. A lights to flag race there for the Italian, and Marino Sato coming through to make it a perfect day for the live team. It is a fantastic performance by that particular team. They were absolutely dominant today. And Tom, we were saying earlier they have the fastest car on the grid, but not necessarily the most reliable. The race is finished, we can talk about it now surely. It might not have the best reliability, but today having that extra power has paid off.
It has, and you can't complain. And what a result also for HRT, with Suttle third and Franchitti fourth. And John Monroe will be very, very delighted with that.
Alexander Wirtz will be coming across the line to finish in 5th position. So a good haul of points there for the Leighton House team. McNish crosses the line for P6. De Grassi, his first points of the season in P7. Then we will have Will Stevens and Will Power coming through the wheels, running line astern there. And Sam Bird, he was in 8th position only a couple of laps ago, so something happened to him, but he still picks up a points for himself and for Zach Speed in P10. Rossi, the championship leader, just missing out on points in P11. Well, I'm not sure if he will still be the championship leader. We'll have to do a quick calculation of the championship standings here. Perry McCarthy there in P12. Kvyat and Grosjean finishing together on track in 13th and 14th. And D'Amata, a feisty drive from here, coming home in P15. But Tom, Fuoco, what a drive from him.
It was, wasn't it? And he just dominated from start to finish, really. I mean, Sartor had maybe a little sniff to see if he could overtake him through the pit stops, but the live car was just far too quick. The two-stop strategy was the way to go. I mean, I thought, with it being like a 35-second pit window for the drivers, I'd have thought the one-stop strategy would have been the perfect one, but no. The light cars were able to extract so much time out of those who were doing the one-stop.
So we've already run you through the top 15. In 16th position, Callum Ilott in the LaRousse. A very quiet day from him. We're not really sure what happened to the Brit there. Valentino Rossi in P17. Then Winkelhock, Suspiri, Brundle and Zanardi all lapped. And then the retirees, Neil Jarni, Scott Speed, Mike Conway, Enrique Benaldi and Jose Maria Lopez. And the fastest lap, indeed, Antonio Fuoco. So it is a perfect score for the live team. And Tom, we don't really see dominance all too often in the Grand Prix World Series. It's very much backwards and forwards between all of the different drivers. But today, it's absolute perfection from Live and from Andrew Sampson.
And that confirms that the Live team now lead the Constructors' Championship in League 2 by 12 points. Leighton House also closing in on the LaRousse team as well. So it's looking very, very tasty in the battle for promotion here. And just looking further down, HRT in 4th place now, but the looks of things with 3rd and 4th, 59 points they're on. They are now 29 points off the top. So much can change next time out in Chennai, Topher, a circuit where the Grand Prix World Series went to last season. And I will most certainly be looking forward to that. But before that, we've still got another race to come here in Fuji.
Yes, we do indeed. Just checking out the drivers' standings here. Rossi does hold on to the lead of the standings, even though he did not score today. He's on 51 points. Suttil with his 3rd place. He's in 2nd on 46. Sato up into P3, and Fuoco with a 1st place and a 6th place in his 2 races so far. He's up into P6 in the standings. This is still all to play for. It's only round 5 out of 16 so far this season. We still have a long way to go. And as you say, Tom, we have one more race coming your way. So go make yourself a cup of tea, go to the toilet, do what you do, and we will see you in 5 minutes.
Ah, what music!
There is no terrible way to win. There is only winning.
We won't be
out long.
Take your time. Track's all yours.
You ready? The name on the middle of that steering wheel should tell you that I was born ready. Hit it. Attaboy.
Let me drive. I will make a fool out of you.
I got a message for all of them. Shake and bake.
What does that do? Does that blow your mind?
That just happened.
These cars, you sit in a box, a coffin, gasoline all around you. It is like being inside a bomb.
It's tough enough being a girl on the track. Living in my dad's shadow doesn't help much.
You have to be kind to the car. You feel the poor thing groaning underneath you.
No race was ever won in the first corner.
I'm gonna give you an engine, low to the ground, extra big oil pan will cut the wind from underneath you. That'll give you 30 to 40 more horsepower.
Every one of us has to find a reason to do this. You do it because you're driven.
Brakes are warm. Tires are warm.
I'll work in the cars and I'll drive and I'll eat and sleep and I'll work in the cars and I'll drive.
Damn fast, and when he runs so close together, it requires fantastic concentration and rather special skills.
I was beginning to think I'd never be anything more than a piston-happy lead-foot punk. Then this starts to happen.
If you're going to push a piece of machinery to the limit and expect it to hold together, you have to have some sense of where that limit is.
Besides, the best drivers don't dwell on the future or the past. The best drivers focus only on the present.
They could never have imagined it, those pioneers who invented the automobile, that it would possess us like this in our imaginations, our dreams.
I'm gonna give you a fuel line that will hold an extra gallon of gas. I'm gonna shave half an inch off you and shape you like a bullet.
Somebody put it in your mind you gotta be perfect every time out or you're a failure. Well, forget that. Just forget it.
Racing is in my blood.
I was put on this earth to race cars.
I accept every time I get in my car. There's 20% chance I could die, and I can live with it, but not 1% more.
No, Nicky, don't bring the percentages into this. Don't be a pro. The minute you do that, you kill what's good about this. You kill the sport.
And at that speed, your reactions can barely keep up with these sudden changes in direction.
You ready to put away your toys and grow up?
You want me to work the pit and you drive? Fine, we'll try that.
The car's a living, breathing thing, and she's alive.
If any of us imagined, really imagined, what it would be like to go into a tree at 150 miles an hour, we would probably never get into the cars at all. None of us.
Are you ready to become a real race car driver?
I am just as good as anybody out there on that track, and I don't need anybody to win my races for me.
I wish my daddy were alive to see this, to feel this.
And when we get you primed, painted, and weighed, you'll be ready to go out on that racetrack. You hear me? You're gonna be perfect.
You don't understand what happens, do you? They make 10,000 cars, they make them exactly the same way, and one or two of them turn out to be something special. Nobody knows why.
When I won it was probably the last time I ever felt pure victory.
So it has always seemed to me that to do something very dangerous requires a certain absence of imagination.
Because I'm quicker than all of you.
Soon you will know what it is like to be defeated by the hands of somebody who is truly better than you.
The only thing to do here is to drive just as fast as you know how and hope your car doesn't break.
And if you no longer go for a gap that exists, you're no longer a racing driver.
If you ain't first, you're last. There's 40 other vultures out there who managed to finish the race on their tires. You see Darren Waltrip using up his tires?
There's nothing I can't do with a race car.
I mean, hell, isn't that what we're in this for? To stare death in the face and to cheat it? Come on, there's nobility in that. It's like being knights.
Sometimes you could swear the whole thing's falling to bits.
No pressure, nobody breathing down my back, just driving because I left it pure.
On the other hand, I suppose potential problems are in the back of your mind all the time.
So in many ways, I feel responsible for what happened. And
You were, but trust me, watching you win those races, while I was fighting for my life, you were equally responsible for getting me back in the car.
You're so lucky. Sit there all closed in by machinery and bolts, precise things. There's hardly any room for you. It must be a nice, safe feeling.
Yeah, you gotta learn to trust something. Might just as well be the seat of your pants.
A lot of people go through life doing things badly. Racing's important to men who do it well. When you're racing, it's life. Anything that happens before or after, it's just waiting.
Well, we can drive. We can drive beyond the limits of the tires, the engine, the car, anything else.
Look out there is the perfect lap. No mistakes, every gear change, every corner, perfect. You see it?
I just hope when you do, that I'm there to see it.
Ask any racer, any real racer. It don't matter if you win by an inch or a mile. Winning's winning.
But it isn't just business, is it? What we do. It's passion, love, which is why we're prepared to risk our lives for it.
Racing. That's the name of the game, isn't it? Win or lose, put up or shut up.
Why does everybody keep telling me what my problem is?
That you get so emotional.
You would never, ever say that to a guy.
If you don't leave your feelings off the track, you're never going to get what you want.
I'm a race driver, and I can win it on my own. Please let me race.
fine.
then let's race.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are ready for the League 1 race here in Fuji. We've just had an absolutely exceptional League 2 race, which was a Life 1-2. Antonio Fuoco taking his maiden Grand Prix World Series victory ahead of teammate Marino Sato. Adrian Sittel closing out the podium there. And Tom, we've just had one fantastic race. Do you think we'll expect more of the same in the League 1 race?
And who else will live the life here in Fuji? That's what I would like to say.
We're getting right onto the puns again. It happens every time now. Just go straight in for puns.
Well, I was always going to say Viva la Vida, but it would have been less relevant because we're in Japan, not Spain. So I don't know what live the life means in Japanese, but life would most certainly be relishing that victory here tonight. And that 1-2, of course. Now, can any of the other teams in League 1 make it a 1-2? Now, if I was to say which team is most likely to do that, Topher, it'd probably have to be either Simtek or Arrows. Now, if you remember, Arrows picked up a good result here last year in Fuji. Nico Hulkenberg finishing, I think, second place in the race. And the Prost boys finishing first and fourth. Well, it's going to be very tough for the Prost boys to do it today. But for Simtek, I think they've got a good opportunity to get a good result once again with Stoffel van Dorn on the back of that victory in Yongam last week. Can both he and Dixon last the distance?
So, Simtek and Arrows, the only two teams to have taken victory so far in the League 1 Championship, but it's one win apiece for each of their drivers. The opening race of the season won by the Arrows of Kamui Kobayashi, making it 2 seasons in a row where he has opened up his accounts with a victory. Then in Adelaide, it was Scott Dixon who took his maiden Grand Prix World Series victory with a fine drive in the Simtek. And then it was back to Arrows in Sepang. Nico Hulkenberg taking his maiden Grand Prix World Series victory in Malaysia. And then last time out, as you said, Tom, Stoffel van Dorn made it 3 maiden Grand Prix victors in a row. In both leagues, Tom, we've had 4 different winners from 4 races. It's been super competitive so far. Van Dorn's qualified on pole position again today, but that doesn't necessarily guarantee him the victory. We saw in the League 2 race, Antonio Fuoco, he went likes the flag to take his victory. Doesn't mean that Van Dorn's going to do the same, though.
No, and I don't think it's quite as convincing for Simtek as it was for the live team, but I think Van Dorn has still got a good opportunity to take victory again here today, which will most definitely kickstart his championship. You know, if he was to come away with back-to-back wins here, he's very much in the title fight for sure. I can see it.
Well, speaking of the title fight, let's have a quick look at the driver standings going into this race. I've clicked the wrong button there. There we go. Now it's the League 1 Championship here. So Takuma Sato, he hasn't won a Grand Prix yet so far in his Grand Prix World Series career, Tom. But just on pure consistency, he's leading the championship.
And just so that you know, he's racing in an Onyx, not a Super Gurry. I think Tover's probably got the old habits back in the days of himself in the Super
I think I might need to have a word with the graphics department on this one. So,
okay.
Takuma Sato, he did drive for Super Gurry. That's probably the thinking on that one. Anyway, moving on from that, Takuma Sato, he is with the Onyx team, 45 points. It's just a model of consistency so far for him, Tom, isn't it?
Yeah, and even without a race victory to his name this season, he's proven that he's got it. I mean, he was very unlucky last year. Didn't even finish any of last season's races that he competed in for Onyx. But I'm so pleased that he's doing well, and a good job for Ryan Ferris for keeping him on board. Nico Hulkenberg up there for Arrows as well. He was unlucky last year, but he's got it right this year so far. He's picked up a victory in Malaysia, it was, with Da Costa right behind in the Super Aguri. Yes, it is correct. Da Costa is in a Super Aguri. So, but Dixon and Stoffel van Dorn in 4th and 5th for Simtek, level on points with each other, and Kamui Kobayashi up there. So, yeah, it's still very tight at this stage, Topher, and I really can't wait to see if there's any other drivers who we haven't seen too much of this season putting a really strong shift here today. Just looking at the grid positions, actually, and looking at Marco Andretti, who I haven't seen too much of, qualifying very well in the manor, out-qualifying comfortably ahead of Brendan Hartley, who will be starting 16th. But Andretti was probably the biggest surprise in them all.
Yeah, I think I can agree with you on that one, Tom. Looking at the rest of the top 10 and drivers there, Tom Christensen, by virtue of a second place that he picked up in Sepang. He's up in 7th in the championship on the same number of points as his fellow Dane Kevin Magnussen there in the AGS. Magnussen has a new teammate for this race. We will get onto that in just a moment. Sebastian Buemi, the top BAR, there in 9th place with 21 points, and Andre Lotterer in 10th place with 20 points. Lotterer will go from 2nd place on the grid today, so maybe a chance for him to move up through the order. Looking at the teams, Arrows lead the way on 69 points by virtue of having 2 Grand Prix victories to their name. Super Guri yet to win a race, but they are there on consistency with 61 points. Same for Onyx as well. No victories, just solid points paying positions. Simtech, they've got 2 victories to their name already this season, but by virtue of not really having scored that many points elsewhere, only on 58 points at this point in the championship. BAR and AGS sharing 31 points each for 5th and 6th. Minardi in 7th, then Midland in 8th with 22, BMS Scuderia Italia 9th with 20, and 40 Corsi in 10th with 13 points. And we mentioned about Magnussen having a new teammate for this weekend and for the rest of the season, Tom. AGS taking a decision to drop Alexander Albon. He's been comfortably outperformed by teammate Kevin Magnussen, so Phil Kinch taking the decision to drop Albon from the team, and not just dropping him to the reserved role, he's dropped him completely. Alex Albon is now a free agent in the Grand Prix World Series, and instead he has brought in former DTM champion, former Formula 1 driver and current Formula E driver Pascal Wehrlein. And Tom, for today, his first time back in the Grand Prix World Series. Don't forget, he drove for BAR for half of last season. He's come back and he's put it 8th on the grid at the first time of asking. 1 position ahead of teammate Magnussen, so maybe an inspired decision here, Tom, to bring Wehrlein on board.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the expectations for him at BAR were clearly too high. But now he's in the AGS. I think that could well be a good team for him. I think he's got a good chance to really settle in and actually put his head down and put in a good shift for Phil Kinch and his boys. Looking at where AGS are in the team's standings, because there is a relegation thing in League One, remember. AGS are 6th on 31 points, which is 21 in front of 11th place team Mana. Because the bottom 3 teams do get relegated at the end of the season. Mana are 11th on 10. Lola are 12th on 4. And Prost, which unfortunately is my team, they're on 2 points. So they've got a lot of ground to make up here, Topher. Because what I do work out is when you're struggling to get that many points and you're falling so far behind, it takes a miracle to goggle it all up and actually find a way back.
Absolutely. And don't forget, Tom, Mana was the team that finished last season in the runners-up position. Sam Hall did a very good job with his Season 1 outfit, but it hasn't really worked out so far for Sam Hall and Mana so far. They've got a 7th place, a 9th place, and a 10th place, adding to their 10 points they've scored so far this season. That could all change at the end of this race. We're looking forward to Fuji and the League One race. So we're going to head down to the grid and show you who has qualified where. We mentioned already Stoffel Van Dorn taking a 2nd pole position in a row for the Simtech team ahead of Andre Lotterer in the BMS Scuderia. Good job by him. Kamau Kobayashi, winner in Taupo, will line up 3rd on the grid alongside Antonio Felix da Costa, the former championship leader. Nico Hulkenberg, race winner, alongside fellow race winner Scott Dixon on row 3. Marco Andretti on row 4, good qualify from him in P7 ahead of returnee Pascal Wehrlein. Kevin Magnussen, P9, ahead of reigning champion Jean-Eric Verne. Pedro De La Rosa, 11th in the Prost, ahead of Robin Frains in the Super Aguri. Pietro Fittipaldi and Kazuki Nakajima make up row 7, ahead of Paul de Resta and Brendan Hartley on row 8. Simona Di Silvestro and Jos Verstappen are there in 17th and 18th positions. Then we have Sebastian Buemi and Mika Salo on row 10. Tom Christensen and home favourite Takuma Sato, row 11. Sato hoping for better from his home event. Felipe Nasser there in 23rd ahead of Jeff Gordon, Thiago Montero and Tatiana Calderon, bringing up 26th position and last. So, Tom, Van Dorn on pole position for a 2nd race in a row. Can he make it 2 wins from 2?
Should he get off the line well, picks the right strategy, keeps out of trouble, avoids mechanical gremlins, the race victory should be his.
Well, we'll have to wait and see how this race pans out. He's in the fastest car on the grid. He made it work last time out in Yongam. Can he make it work today in Fuji? We're waiting for the lights to extinguish and we can get the League One race underway. And we are off. Stoffel Van Dorn leads away from pole position Andre Lotterer bogging down a little bit in the second phase of the start, and he's now coming under threat from Kamui Kobayashi for second place. Van Dorn rocketing off the line there. And Lotterer looks like he's held off the advances of Kamui Kobayashi and blocked him off from making a move there. And Scott Dixon is up into P3 from 6th on the grid. He's gone right down the inside of everyone. He's had a fantastic start, has the Kiwi. But Van Dorn, he holds on to the lead ahead of Andre Lotterer. Dixon, as I said, he has gone from 6th to 3rd. What a start by him. Kamui Kobayashi from 3rd down to 4th. Da Costa there in P5 ahead of Nico Hulkenberg. Marco Andretti holding station in P7, as is Pascal Wehrlein in 8th and Magnussen in P9. And Robin Frames, a good start from him as well. He's gone from 12th into 10th. That was a bit of a manic start there, Tom. But what about Scott Dixon coming through from 6th into 3rd?
Oh, it was a sensational start, wasn't it? Andre Lotterer keeping hold of 2nd place in the BMS Scuderia Italia. Kobayashi in 4th place. Da Costa, Hulkenberg, Andretti keeping hold of 7th position in the Manor. Very importantly, he keeps his Manor up there because Manor are in desperate need of some points.
So we are riding on board with Antonio Felix da Costa, who was leading the championship before the last race. His lead was taken by Takuma Sato, who is enjoying his home Grand Prix today. Well, I say enjoying, Tom. He started down in P22, so not really the start of the weekend that he would have wanted. But Da Costa there, he is the meat in an arrow sandwich. Kamui Kobayashi running in 4th at his home event. He will want to bring home at the very least a podium, I should imagine, today. But there is Stoffel Van Dorn. He has a lead of a 2nd over Andre Lotterer, as Antonio Felix da Costa is looking down the inside of Kamui Kobayashi. And he's trying to get the legs down him on the straight, but Kobayashi holding on at the moment. Da Costa, he's going to have the inside line down into turn 1, as Marco Andretti's looking down the inside of Nico Hulkenberg as well. So all changing for position here at the moment. There is Van Dorn in the lead going through turn 1. Da Costa does indeed make the move stick on Kamui Kobayashi, and Andretti has also got past Hulkenberg. So both arrows cars, Tom, losing 2 positions.
Yeah, and the arrows losing a place for each car on that pit straight there. Andretti finding some good pace so far. We've only just done 1 lap so far, so there's a long way to go yet. And bear in mind, some drivers could well be on a different strategy to others.
That is very true. In the League 2 race, we saw the majority of the fields going on to a 2-stop strategy. But we had a few outliers, didn't we, Tom? We had Adrian Sutil, for example, who utilised the 1-stop strategy to get himself into P3 on the podium. We haven't yet seen a fuel light. And here's Marco Andretti going down the inside of the other arrow. So Andretti possibly on a lighter fuel load here. He's made that work really well, as he's overtaken both arrows in just the space of about half a lap. So Andretti making the Manor work very well at the moment. Started P7 and now up into P5. He's got Da Costa in his sights next up the road. There is Stoffel Van Dorn. He's brought his lead up to 1.2 seconds already over Andre Lotterer in the BMS Scuderia Italia. And Scott Dixon up from P6 to P3. A fantastic start by him. And a little bit of a lock-up there from one of the Lolas behind Mika Salo. I believe that was Simona Di Silvestro. Yes, it was. Salo, he's had a bit of an unfortunate start to the season so far, Tom. He has yet to finish a race, let alone not score any points. He's retired from every race so far. So for Dave Goddard and the 40 team, a finish today for Salo is the very least that they'll be aiming for.
And possibly a championship point. Now, 40 are 10th in the team standings, so they are sort of on the cusp of being dropped into the relegation zone. And given where Manor are with Andretti in 5th, that would drop them in there. So Salo and Gordon need to try and boost their tallies today to boost 40's chances of survival. It's the same goes with Prost and Lola as well. Now Lola have got Di Silvestro and Calderon outside the top 15.
It hasn't been a fantastic start to the season for the Lola team, but Tom, cast your mind back to the Vancouver Grand Prix that we did, the non-championship race that started off the season. Di Silvestro won. She won that race. And Lotterer getting up on the curbs there, but Simona Di Silvestro, she won the non-championship race, and we're thinking maybe this is actually going to be a very good season for MasterCard Lola. But as it stands, they haven't really done that much, in all honesty.
No. Well, they've been thereabouts, in the sort of threshold of the points, but they just haven't had the best reliability, and that's been their issue. I mean, they had a good opportunity to get points in Adelaide, they threw it all away. and now they're just having to sort of pick up scraps from where others left off, and that's not what you want to be doing in this series. I'm just looking to see if Andretti's closing in a little bit on Da Costa. He's pulling away from Kobayashi and Hulkenberg, but I don't quite think he's going to be close enough to Da Costa. So I think what's more important to Andretti is just pulling away from the Aris drivers. You can see Hulkenberg getting by Kobayashi, and we can see Paul Di Resta making a move on Kevin Magnussen in the AGS. So Di Resta in his Midland up into 11th position.
Right, now, you can get in contact with us via the YouTube live chat that we had. Motorsport Mike, he's asking, no penalty for Hartley. Now, here's the thing with Hartley. He was awarded a back of the grid penalty from a collision that he had at the Sepang race in round 3. But for the Yongam Grand Prix, Sam Hall and the Manor team decided to race under appeal, so that the back of the grid penalty was not applied for that race. And Hartley took up his original qualifying position. Now the plan was for the stewards to put Hartley to the back of the grid for this race instead. But Manor went through and put forward another appeal. Basically, they brought in new data to suggest why Hartley wasn't at fault. And the stewards, they've been looking through it, but they haven't come to a decision yet on whether Hartley is indeed worthy of that penalty. So they're having another look at it basically, but they have said to Sam Hall and the Manor team, this is it. If they still uphold the penalty, if Hartley does indeed be found guilty, he will start from the back of the grid at the Chennai Grand Prix, no questions asked. So basically it's a last chance saloon for Manor to overturn that penalty that Brendan Hartley got, which, if you remember, Tom, was taken because he punted Paul Di Resta off the road. There's a reason why Motorsport Mike, or Michael Gillespie as we lovingly know him, there's a reason why he's the one that's bringing it up, is because it was his driver that Brendan Hartley punted off the road.
Of course, and yeah, it was a really strange incident, wasn't it, in Sepang, and Hartley, rightly so, got the penalty for it. But I don't really see what Sam Hall has got to complain about, if I'm honest with you. Just looking to see Kobayashi's beginning to go backwards here, Topher. He's dropping behind the AGS of Pascal Wehrlein, who's going well so far. Definitely going better than he had done in the BAR of last year. Will he last the distance in this one?
So one AGS going one direction and the other going in the other. Magnussen dropping down into P12 from his starting position of P9 as Nakajima looks at the inside of De La Rosa there. Whereas Pascal Wehrlein, he's up into 7th place after starting 8th. So Phil Kinch, the team manager of the AGS team, bits of a lock-up there for Jos Verstappen in P21. Phil Kinch, he wasn't at all happy with how Alex Albon was performing. In fact, he hasn't really been at all happy with how the team has been performing. They started off the season very well. They did have a very strong package, but struggled to score points. They do have a few on the boards here, Tom. I'm just trying to find my notes here, how many points they've got. They've got 31 points. They've scored a fair few points. They're up there in P6 on Championship at the moment. But Phil Kinch, he expects a lot out of his drivers, and he thought he'd be up there fighting for victories. So Kevin Magnussen, he's about to lose out to De La Rosa there, but by him dropping Alex Albon and bringing in Pascal Wehrlein, it's basically a new lease of life into the team. And Wehrlein, he is making the most of his second opportunity in the Grand Prix World Series up into P7, and looks like to me he might be closing down on Nico Hulkenberg. The gap is 1.4 and it's now down to 1.2, so yes indeed, Tom, Pascal Wehrlein closing down on the race-winning arrows.
Yeah, and it's an interesting one, isn't it? And Wehrlein going really, really well. It's just over a second behind Hulkenberg. Hulkenberg looking to replicate his second place results at Fuji last year. Kobayashi didn't make it to the end. Now, if you remember, Topher, we saw quite a few of the championship contenders struggle here in Fuji last year. Jean-Luc Vergne, obviously the championship leader. Kobayashi was another. I think Janae retired as well. I can't quite remember. I may be wrong on that one. Yeah, it was a race of attrition really, and De La Rosa suddenly stopped because of a throttle issue, which he came back into the pits for. And Alguersuari was the ultimate victor through all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were expecting this race to be somewhat attritional as well, but looking at the League 2 race that we had just now, only 5 retirements in that race. It was a lot better than we were expecting. We got some really good racing across the course of the 50 laps there. And hopefully more the same today. We'd rather see drivers actually on track fighting for battles rather than seeing drivers drop out as a result of whatever reason, be it a transmission issue water leak, an engine blow up, or a crash or whatever. We'd much rather see these drivers actually out there, actually plugging away and trying to get as good a result as possible. We're looking at Stoffel Van Dorn. He's doing a very good job at the moment again for the Simtek team. 2.8 seconds in the green ahead of Andre Lotterer. So Van Dorn, he was dropped by the Simtek team at the end of season 1, Tom. Got Woodwitz. He said that he felt that Van Dorn's form was too inconsistent, so he dropped him in favour of Jamie Whincup. But since Van Dorn has come back, 2 races, 2 pole positions, 1 victory, and at the moment, 3 seconds in the lead.
And the same can't be said with Kobayashi's race at the moment, because Robin Fries has just got past him.
So Kobayashi dropping down even further there. He's still alongside the Dutchman, trying to hold on to the 8th position, but Frame says no. He goes through into P8, and that is now both Super Aguris into the top 8 on their home turf. Super Aguri trying to get a good result in Fuji here today. So Kamui Kobayashi back into the slipstream of Robin Frames. He wants to get that position back. There's a bit of a train forming behind these cars here. They've also got Jean-Eric Verne there, as well as Paul Di Resta. Pedro De La Rosa in the Prost, not too far behind. He's about 7 tenths behind Paul Di Resta at the moment. And then we've got Nakajima and Kevin Magnussen. He started in P9. He did a fairly good job in qualifying. Down into P14, Tom. It's not really working out for Magnussen so far in this race.
It hasn't, and Kobayashi's lost another position, this time to the reigning world champion, Jean-Eric Verne.
So Verne, he's had a little bit of a below par start to the season this time around. As you say, Tom, he is the Drivers' Champion of the Grand Prix World Series. So far in his title defence, only 1 points paying position. He came home in P5 last time out in Yongan that brought him 10 points. But ideally, Tom, he'd want to be a lot further up and challenging at the front for victories and for a second championship.
Still a long way to go yet, and given how this season's panned out for the Drivers' Championship in League One, there's still a lot of time to make up for lost ground. So Verne can do it. He knows he can do it. He just needs to dig deep and be patient and wait for his opportunities to come. He can sort out his qualifying. That's a start. If he can get to the end of races, that's an even better shift. He just needs to keep plucking away and just, hope for the best, really. And, perhaps with a little bit of luck, he can see himself back onto the podium and back into the realms of challenging for race wins.
Well, I'm looking at the stats that we've got here, Tom, and Jean-Eric Verne, he currently has an average grid position of 9.8, so within the top 10 on average. His best position so far on the grid was P7 in Adelaide, as Kobayashi loses out another position as Paul Di Resta and drops out of the points. So Kobayashi not having a good race at all on home turf. He started in P3, he had a fantastic qualifying, already down to P11 on lap 9. It's just not happening for them, is it, Tom? I don't really know what I can say about Kobayashi's pace at the moment. He did a stellar job in qualifying, but not even 10 laps in and he's down outside of the points.
Well, we saw earlier with Alan McNish, who took his Coloni quite far into the race. I would say Kobayashi's on a one-stop here, Topher. I think given his pace and the way he's dropping down the order, it can only mean he's on a heavier fuel load.
Well, I hope it is that, because it's not really a good shade on Kobayashi to be dropping down the order like that, especially at his home Grand Prix. So I think for his sake, we will have to hope that it is due to having a heavier fuel load. It's Jeff Gordon there trying to get himself out of last position. I believe that was Tom Christensen. It's definitely a Minardi. I think it was Christensen he's trying to get past to get through into P25. Now, Jeff Gordon, he's the only 40 Corsi driver to have scored points so far in this season. And Jeff Gordon, he was a very interesting shout to bring into the team for this season. A good shout by Dave Goddard. They're a 40 Corsi team. And Jeff Gordon, he finished 4th in Adelaide and then followed that up with a 10th place finish in Malaysia. So he's got good point scoring pedigree. And that's coming from a NASCAR driver coming over to Formula 1. And we said at the start of the season, Tom, Jeff Gordon, really? I mean, he's a good driver, yeah, but really for Formula 1? Is he going to cut it? And so far, I say yes, absolutely. He's doing a fantastic job there for 40 Corsi.
Yeah, I mean, we saw that great drive, didn't we, in Adelaide, wasn't it, from Jeff Gordon? Just looking to see his record in terms of the races he's done. So he's had a 19th place finish in Taupo, 4th in Adelaide, 10th in Sepang, 16th in Yongam. So he's not done a bad job, Topher, by any stretch of the imagination. Who would have thought he'd gain a 4th place in Adelaide, which will come crucial to Forte's chances, as I think someone else has dropped down the order. Couldn't quite tell who that was there, Topher, dropping out of the top 15.
I didn't quite catch that either. I was looking at Pascal Wehrlein having a bit of a crossed-up moment there into the chicane. He still holds on to P7, so he's plodding along quite nicely. Kevin Magnussen now down into 15th place. He's lost out to De La Rosa and Fittipaldi. And Phil Kinch, he's commenting saying, is Magnussen on a one-stop? That boy needs to kick up the... Anyway, we hope that Phil Kinch, for your sake, he is on a one-stop strategy, because there is a fast powertrain, a fast engine underneath that AGS. They're trying to get the most out of it, so I do very much get the impression that Magnussen is probably on a one-stop strategy, as he now loses out to Sebastian Buemi. So one AGS within 12 seconds of the lead of the race here, and the other one now outside the top 15. And Tom, we're saying that it might just be the fact he's on a one-stopper, but still, you've got to be able to get track position in these cases, and Magnussen is not doing that, dropping down outside of the top 15.
He's not, is he? And yeah, I think once a lot the field do come in for their first stops, you can see Verstappen in the Minardi. It's quite early on in the race he's come in there, lap 10. So I wonder if he's going to try and sort of complete an undercut on a lot of these guys to see if he can just move up the order a little bit. He hasn't got anything to lose. He was at the back of the field anyway.
So Kevin Magnussen, I'm looking at his stats here. Generally a better qualifier, a better racer than he is qualifier. Currently he's got an average grid position of 10.8 across the opening 5 rounds, and across the opening 4 races we have completed, an average finish of 7.75. So Magnussen, he does race well. He has brought home a good number of points. He's had a 6th place finish twice in the opening 2 races. He finished 12th in Malaysia, and then he finished in P7 in Korea. So he's always been up there fighting for points and bringing home a fair number of them for AGS. But at the moment, it's not really working out so far, at least for that side of the AGS garage, Tom. Up in P7, Pascal Wehrlein on his return to the series. Could Wehrlein maybe utilise his strategy and get maybe even into top 5 at this rate?
Possibly. I'm just looking at Di Silvestro, who has been further down the order here than he has been in previous week. Down inside of Brendan Hartley, of all drivers. He's really struggling this year, isn't he?
Well, Brendan Hartley, he did take pole position for the first race of the season in Taupo. We were thinking maybe he could go one better from his vice-champion status that he got in Season 1. But that pole position, that's really as good as it's got for the New Zealander. He went on to finish that race in P14. He had some issues in that race, which put him down the order. Australia, he was 4th on the grid but retired in what was a highly attritional. And Kevin Magnussen there with more people behind him. There's a little bit of moving around and jostling position there. So maybe, we've got a bit of contact there. Hartley knocking up the back of Magnussen there. We think Magnussen might be having some sort of mechanical issue, which could explain why he's been dropping down so far. He's now down in 20th. So he must have an issue, and he does. It's a brake problem. So Phil Kinch, there is your answer. It was a developing problem on the AGS that will have contributed to why he was going so slow earlier on, and it has now come out in the form of a brake problem. So that will definitely explain why he was losing positions left, right and centre earlier on. Down to P22, surely he's going to be pulling into the pits here. He's losing more positions to a Midland and to Tatiana Calderon in the loader there. So that will be hopefully a simple Control-Alt-Delete on the brake system. They are a brake-by-wire system. They do have an easy fix, but not really what Phil Kinch and the AGS team want. The pace is there for the team, as is evident with Pascal Wehrlein up in 7th position. But maybe, Tom, it depends on the strategy that Magnussen is on, obviously. But if he was on a 2-stop strategy in the first place, this is more or less around about the right time to get in your first pit stop.
Well, if he's on a 1-stop, that's a real blow, so he's going to have to change his Magnussen. He may just do a 2-stop. Maybe it's what we sometimes see when drivers are coming into the pits. If they're like 10 to 15 laps away from their scheduled pit stop, they can sometimes not bother putting like loads of fuel in and just change the strategy a little bit just to see how his pace goes. Because remember, they can try and get the fastest lap if they wanted to. I think it looked like Lotterer coming into the pits for BMS Scuderia Italia.
And indeed, Lotterer does come into the pits, so the first of the front runners to come in and make their first scheduled stop. So it is a two-stop strategy for Andre Lotterer in the BMS Scuderia Italia, chasing down his first Grand Prix World Series victory today. And BMS, they're having a much better season this time around than they did last time. Emma Featherstone taking over the team, and she's done a fantastic job to get at least one of their cars up into the higher reaches of the table. Andre Lotterer, P10 in the championship as we go into Fuji. Pietro Fittipaldi on the other side of the BMS garage, not really having the best time of it himself. He's still yet to get off the mark in terms of scoring any points. His best finish so far, P13, just looking at my notes here. So one side of the BMS garage doing an absolutely fantastic job in the form of Andre Lotterer. Pietro Fittipaldi, a very capable driver, but not really getting the most out of the machinery at the moment, Tom.
No, definitely not. I'm just looking at Marco Andretti in 4th place at the moment. He's got a bit of ground to make up on Da Costa, actually. He's not too far behind, so he's doing very well, actually, he's Andretti this time around. Brendan Hartley, not quite so, even though he's made up a few positions because of other cars pitting, but he's still got a lot of ground to make up.
Andretti, he was brought in as a replacement for this season. Sam Hawley did start off this season with Tom Cruise, of all people, as Antonio Victor da Costa comes in for his scheduled pit stop, as does Stoffel Van Dorn out of the lead. So Van Dorn in for his first stop up. Scott Dixon now into the lead, but yet to make a pit stop of his own. So Marco Andretti, he came in as a replacement for Tom Cruise. And effectively the idea there was, if you guys remember, Tom Cruise came in to basically do some filming for an upcoming Hollywood movie that he's making. He wanted to actually drive the car for himself. If you remember back to like Top Gun, Days of Thunder and so on, he wanted to do all the stunts himself, as Da Costa is getting held up here. So he's coming for his pit stop, he's having to wait. He's having to wait even more. This is an absolute disaster for Da Costa, as we've got maybe 7 or 8 drivers in the pits now. So Da Costa fighting for points early on, and he's surely going to drop down a few positions as a result of that when all of this plays out. There's Mika Salo pitting for his first stop. But yeah, Tom Cruise came in to do some filming for Manor, and when he decided he didn't actually want to do the whole season, Sam Hall decided to bring in Marco Andretti in his place, which has to be said, Tom, might not necessarily have been an obvious choice in bringing Marco Andretti into Formula 1, but Marco Andretti, lacking Brendan Hartley in terms of qualifying pace. Brendan Hartley has an average grid position of 10 at the moment, whereas Andretti has 15. But in the race pace, Marco Andretti clearly ahead of Hartley on that. Andretti, he's got an average race finish of 8th, whereas Hartley has 12. So maybe it was actually a really good call for Sam Hall to bring in Marco Andretti as Scott Dixon comes into the pits. But Sam Hall, he doesn't really have the same sort of fast car this season as he did last season. So at the moment, Tom, the driver's trying to make up for that.
Yeah, I'm just looking at Dixon and Fiennes coming into the pits. Will Kobayashi come in or will he stay out? He stays out. Now, I thought he would do that because he's going on a longer first stint, hence why his pace earlier on in the race wasn't quite so good. And I think De La Rosa's following suit, actually. He's staying out as well in the Prost. So Prost taking a gamble, actually, on the one stop, it seems. But it's worth a gamble.
Absolutely. Prost haven't really had a fantastic season either so far, Tom. I know it's your team, but I do have to be honest about it. Not really the best start to the season. This is from a team that won 2 races last season, one each for Pedro De La Rosa and Jaime Alguersuari. Alguersuari not racing at the moment, actually, Tom. He was banned from the last race at Yongan because of multiple accidents he caught at Sepang. But for this race, Tom, he decided to give Nasser another go.
I had been told that Alguersuari had an unexpected DJ gig they had to attend. That was very
that's it.
Yeah, that's why. So he thought, we've already given permission to actually do that and give Nasser another opportunity, because Nasser's only had 1 race in the Grand Prix World Series so far. So we thought, why not just assess him a little bit more and give him another opportunity and allow Alguersuari to go and enjoy his gig in wherever he's doing his gig at. I can't quite remember where he's doing his gig at, actually. I think he's doing it in Buenos Aires, of all places, actually.
Well, we are going to Buenos Aires later on in the season, so maybe if he's up for it, maybe he could do another more private gig for us there. Do a little bit of an after party for the teams and drivers. That would be fantastic. As Kamui Kobayashi, he assumes the lead of the Fuji Grand Prix. A Japanese driver leading on Japanese soil. The crowd will be absolutely adoring that at the moment. As Brendan Hartley there, under attack from Andre Lotterer, who has come into pits. Hartley yet to pit at the moment, but he now loses P4 to the German. He's trying to get back down the inside here again. And nope, he backs back down into the gearbox of the BMS. That position is gone for Hartley. So Kamui Kobayashi, he leads ahead of Pedro Della Rosa. Those two evidently going on to a one-stop strategy here in Fuji. Van Dorn, the Nets race leader, is in P3 as Da Costa makes his way past teammate Robin Fraines. So Da Costa has come in for his pit stop and is on the fresher tyres. He got held up in the pits, if you remember, and he will now want to make up for lost time. He's running behind Nico Hülkenberg, whereas earlier he was running ahead of the German. And Da Costa will now be doing everything he can to get forwards into a better position if he can. There is Pedro Della Rosa, a race winner last season. He has had, well, what can we say about the season he's had so far? So, an average grid position of 14th and an average finish of 14th. So, consistency there for Della Rosa. But I'm sure you'd probably want that consistency to be at the very least within the top 10.
Well, I was just looking at Da Costa at the moment, he'll be ruining that lost time in the pits as Marco Andretti locks up there into the penultimate turn, doesn't want to be doing that too much. And Kobayashi continuing to extend his margin over Della Rosa, although Van Dorn is closing in with the fresher tyres. I'm not sure how much Della Rosa is going to fight it out with Van Dorn. If there was one place he may want to let him go by, he's probably into the chicane, so he doesn't have to sort of fight with him too much.
So we allow on lap 18. Sorry, stumbling over my worms a little bit there. Lap 18 of the Fuji Grand Prix as Scott Dixon trying to get down the inside of Brendan Hartley there, but not able to make the move stick. So lap 18, and it is Kamui Kobayashi who is in the lead of the Fuji Grand Prix but yet to pit. Della Rosa running in second but yet to pit. Stoffel Van Dorn, the Nets race leader, only a couple of tenths behind Della Rosa, and now fighting with him for second and makes his way through. So Van Dorn not really wanting to waste any time stuck behind the Prost. He wants to get a second win in as many races in Season 2. Andre Lotterer there in P4 ahead of Brendan Hartley, still yet to make a pit stop. Scott Dixon P6 ahead of Pascal Wehrlein on his return to the Grand Prix World Series, P7 at the moment for the AGS. Jeff Gordon, he's up into P8 but he's yet to pit as well, so having a quite strong race so far in the 40 Corsi, but we will have to wait and see where he comes up when he makes his pit stop. Marco Andretti there in P9 and Nico Hülkenberg in the second, Arrows in P10 ahead of the Super Aguri duo of Antonio Felix da Costa and Robin Fraines. So looking at the lap times there, Van Dorn over a second quicker than Kobayashi on that last time around, so Van Dorn closing in as quickly as he can to the back of that Arrows. So with Kobayashi and Van Dorn on different strategies, we saw this in the League 2 race, Tom. We saw that the Life drivers, Antonio Fuoco and Marino Sato, they were both on two-stop strategies while Adrian Sutter was on a one-stop, and Life cars just had enough pace to be able to completely nullify the gamble on Adrian Sutter's one-stop strategy, and at the moment Van Dorn's making that work in his favour as well.
And the good thing for Van Dorn is that he's not got too much traffic to deal with, hence why he's finding so much pace at the moment. And the battle of the Kiwis continued because it looks as though Dixon got by Hartley on the pit straight, but with the use of the slipstream, Hartley was able to get his own back on him. So Hartley having the upper hand so far in between those two, but Hartley could really do with a good result here today.
So looking into the YouTube live chat that we've got going on there, as Da Costa looks down the inside of Jeff Gordon for P9, nothing doing there at the moment. Andrew Sampson saying to Phil Kinch, if you want a fast driver, he'd be happy to loan his reserve driver out to you. Now the reserve driver at the moment within the live team is Yuri Vips, the Estonian Formula 2 racer. So not saying that you have to go for it, Phil, it's completely your decision, but if you decide that maybe Magnussen does need a little bit of a wake-up call and being dropped for a race or two, maybe Eurovips is there. I'm not trying to influence you in any way, it's completely up to you. Just saying that Andrew Sampson is putting an offer forward there for you, so we'll have to wait and see if anything transpires out of that, as Antonio Felix da Costa trying to get down the inside of Jeff Gordon here, but that 40 Corsi's got some legs down. Scott Dixon's into pits with a loose wheel. So Scott Dixon's already come in earlier for a scheduled pit stop, and he's now got a loose wheel, which will drop him even further down the order. He hasn't put any more fuel on board, but that is an absolute disaster there for that side of the Simtek garage. They've got Stoffel Vandoorne in the net lead of the race. Scott Dixon, a loose wheel, Tom. That is absolute disaster for Scott Woodwis and for Scott Dixon.
Well, it wasn't a scheduled pit stop. He's actually his second stop of the race already. He's already been in once for a scheduled change of tyres, and now he's he's going to need to be pitting again before the end. That is a real disaster there for Scott Dixon. The reliability gremlins continue for Scott Woodwis' team. This is just not happening for him at the moment.
And it keeps coming up time and time again, Tom. You can have the fastest car on the grid, but that will often come at the cost of reliability. And something going wrong on the wheel there of Scott Dixon. As we look at the other Simtek here of Stoffel Vandoorne getting into the slipstream of Kamui Kobayashi. A little bit far behind at the moment, but we're now riding on board with him as he looks to close in on the Japanese driver. Down the inside, gets into the braking zone, and Stoffel Vandoorne is through back into the lead of the Fuji Grand Prix. So, Stoffel Vandoorne, two-stop strategy, he's making that work at the moment, whereas Kamui Kobayashi on the one-stopper. And we've seen it again, Tom. They're trying a one-stop strategy to spend less time in the pit lane, but they can't really deal with the pace of the Simtek at the moment.
No, the aeros just can't seem to withstand it, and Kobayashi, I think he's taken probably the best gamble possible, staying out on a longer first stint. And I think for De La Rosa as well, I mean, fair play to De La Rosa for keeping the Prost in there. I mean, the pit window, you probably need 35 seconds in order to filter back out, but the benefit of that, Topher, is having much fresher tyres, and that will come in handy for Pedro later on.
Yeah, absolutely. Stoffel Vandoorne making his tyres work at the moment. And here is Scott Dixon in the other Simtek, back down in 25th position after that loose wheel. He's now stuck behind the loader of, I think, Tatiana Calderon, I believe that is. So he'll want to make light work of the clubbing. He can't find a way through into turn 2 there, I believe that was. So he's lost a bit of momentum, but on what should be fresher tyres, he will no doubt make light work of the car in front of me. It is indeed Tatiana Calderon that he's chasing down for P24. Vandoorne sets a 23.7 on that last lap, and Kobayashi 2.2 seconds slower. So Kobayashi not really with any advantage at the moment. He's still got to make his 1:90 pit stop. We haven't seen what his fuel load is. We don't know what lap he will be coming into the pits. As Lotterer is actually closing in on De La Rosa here as well. 1.6 seconds advantage there over the Prost. De La Rosa also trying to make a one-stop strategy work today. So we will have to wait to see whether that brings him a good amount of points. We've got an engine blow-up further up the road. We haven't seen who that is, but someone is retiring from this race.
I think it might be a BAR, Topher. Was it Sebastian Buemi? Oh no, it's not Buemi. It's the car behind him, I think.
We haven't quite seen who that was yet. It's Pietro Fittipaldi. So one of the BMS Scuderias running out the front in P4, challenging for a podium, and the other one going into retirement. An engine blowout for Pietro Fittipaldi. He's had a miserable season so far. He hasn't qualified better than P12 at the moment, and has yet to score any points. So his misery being compounded even further there. So we've been talking about driver changes. Maybe something for Emma Featherstone to think about going forward, Tom?
Well, you need to give him time. Oh, we could see an overtake there from Jean-Eric Verne. I thought he was going to get the job done there on Hulkenberg, but they're getting held up by the 40 of Jeff Gordon, who's going obviously on a longer first stint. Yeah, that could have caused a concertina collision there.
Yeah, it's running very closely there at the moment between Jeff Gordon and I think there's Sebastian Buemi that's going back to in P15, so a 6-car train here. Jeff Gordon yet to pit as De La Rosa loses out on P3 to Andre Lotterer. That was somewhat inevitable, it must be said. De La Rosa has yet to pit and is on tyres that are 22 laps old. Lotterer has come into the pits for the first of his 2 pit stops, so on a fresher rubber, and he's making it work at the moment. Here is Jeff Gordon now under attack from Nico Hulkenberg again. And that 40 Corsi has got some legs down the straight. He's doing well to hold up Nico Hulkenberg here. Looks like the Arrows is now finally going to get down the inside and into P10. Gordon finally dropping out of the points, putting up a good battle there, it must be said. But he's now under attack from the reigning champion, Jean-Eric Verne, and everyone else behind him.
So Hulkenberg finally getting by that obstacle that is Jeff Gordon, no disrespect to Dave Goddard. But looking at Verne, who should get by 40 very, very soon. I'll prove why he is the number one with the shape on the front wing there. But, I'm looking at Lost right now, the sole surviving BMS Scuderia Italia.
We just saw on the graphic, sorry to cut across you, Tom, Scott Dixon is into the pits again. It just momentarily flashed up on the graphic. Dixon through the pits for a third time. And we're not picking up on why he has come in. I can only assume that there has been an issue somewhere, because he's already been in for one pit stop for his scheduled pit stop, and then he came in for a loose wheel, and now he's in again only 2 laps later. And yeah, we haven't picked up what that is all about, but this is an absolute disaster so far for the Kiwi, who took his first Grand Prix World Series victory on the streets of Adelaide, and looking good for a championship challenge this season. But through the pits for a third time, and we don't really know why. We might have to try and find out later on, but Tom, Dixon's day going from bad to worse.
It has, and he's probably a lap down on the leaders, judging by his pace. I think he's just got to try and go for the fastest lap now. His chances of points are well and truly gone.
So maybe the fastest lap is all that Scott Dixon can aim for now after going through the pits for a third time. We don't have a rule in place where you have to be in the top 10 to score fastest lap. It's just wherever you finish out on track. If you take the fastest lap, you get the point for it. So it is all to play for still for Scott Dixon. He can still bring home a championship point to add to the 26 he has already accrued across the course of the season. Well, Thiago Monteiro having a problem there. We're not sure if that's going into retirement or just simply getting crossed up. We've cut away to the AGS of Pascal Wehrlein here. And there we go on the graphic. Thiago Monteiro out of the race. We haven't seen what the reason is. It's probably mechanical, but we will find out and confirm that later on. But that is one of the Midlands out of this race. Not good news for Michael Gillespie and the team. One driver out, and the other one, Tom, Paul di Resta in P12.
Yeah, the broadcasting team not doing a very good job there in terms of directing to find out what Monteiro's retirement was the cause. But either way, one car left in the race for Michael Gillespie's team. The rest of them needing to salvage something. In fact, Paul di Resta's had a decent season so far in that team. So far in the 4 races, he's had a 5th, 2 non-finishes, and an 11th place. So I think he's been qualifying well this di Resta. Probably had a little bit of luck not on his side, but above all, on merit, he's done a really cracking job. And you can see there's on Onyx, but looks like Kazuki Nakajima pulling alongside Jeff Gordon. I haven't seen too much of the Onyxes in this race because they've got 2 Japanese drivers in their team and they're just off the pace this weekend.
We have seen absolutely nothing of Takuma Sato from what I've seen. The championship leader going into this race, and big things were expected of Takuma. As we got a bit more smoke coming up. That looks like it's an engine problem. Is Brendan Hartley, one of the Manners, dropping out of the Fuji Grand Prix? So this miserable season that Brendan Hartley has been enduring gets even worse. He's going to drop out of the Fuji Grand Prix, and this was a driver that we were expecting to fight for the championship this year. Manor had a really good season 1. They finished in the runners-up position in both the drivers and the team's championships. But Brendan Hartley, he took pole position in Taupo, and since then it's just got gradually worse and worse. He's now pulling over to the side of the circuit and into retirement here at Fuji. So one sole remaining Manor left in this race in the form of Marco Andretti in P6. And I don't really know what to say about Manor, if I'm completely honest, Tom. Sam Hall clearly knows what he's doing in the Grand Prix World Series. He's a very capable team manager, as evidenced by the fact that he finished as the vice champion last season. It's just not happening for him in Season 2.
No, it's not. I just don't know where to begin with Hartley at the moment. We saw last year at the beginning of it, he was going through a bad run of fun. You just can see a car coming into the pits. Couldn't quite tell who that was. Maybe Jeff Gordon.
I think it was Fraines going into the pits. Yes, it was.
Yeah, but the thing with Hartley is going for bad to us, and it's bad news for Manor as well because they really need these points to avoid relegation.
I have just had it confirmed to me that Thiago Monteiro retired as a result of an electrical issue. So mechanical gremlins bringing an end to Monteiro's race here in Fuji. And not good news for Michael Gillespie there, but he still does have one driver running in this race. Paul di Resta now up into P10. So there is a potential of points there for Paul di Resta and the Midland team. But I'm sure that Michael Gillespie, he's a very competitive guy. He will want to get some more points on the board and get some more points finishes in future.
De La Rosa having a fine race where he is in 4th place. He's over 4 seconds ahead of Pascal Wehrlein, who's pitted. There's no one else around De La Rosa, so De La Rosa driving his own race and putting a really, really strong shift. I've got a good feeling that he's going to be in the points by the end of this one, Topher. He really needs to get some points on the board.
It is absolutely possible, Tom. We don't want to put any sort of commentator's curse onto it, so I won't say too much. But as you say, Tom, De La Rosa, very disappointing season so far, but he's up there in P4, running his own race, as you said. It's looking very good for him to get some points today. I will not say more than that, because we still have a long way to go. We've just passed the half-distance mark here at the League 1 Fuji Grand Prix. Stoffel van Dorn, 9.7 seconds in the lead over Kamui Kobayashi, the home hero, trying to go for his 2nd victory of the season. Andre Lotterer in 3rd place ahead of Pedro de la Rosa, having a fantastic drive in P4. Pascal Wehrlein on his return to the Grand Prix World Series with the AGS team in P5. Phil Kinch surely must be happy with how Wehrlein is doing so far, especially after the disappointment of Alex Albon's few races in the opening portion of the season. Marco Andretti, the sole remaining manor, there in P6 ahead of Antonio Felix da Costa in the Super Aguri, the former championship leader following the Sepang Grand Prix. Nico Hulkenberg took his first Grand Prix victory of the season. He's running in P8 ahead of reigning champion John-Eric Verne, and Paul di Resta at the moment on for 1 single point there in P10. Motorsport Michael Gillespie confirming in the comments, he's very competitive. We know you are, Michael. We love you for it. And we hope that di Resta does indeed bring you some points there, at least in P10. We'll have to wait and see how the remaining 23 laps go. Here at Fuji, we're looking at Simona Di Silvestro all over the back of Jeff Gordon. Jeff Gordon, I don't think has yet pitted, has he, Tom? I think he's still running to a one-stop strategy and has yet to come in. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think he's come into the pits yet.
No, he hasn't. I was just thinking, by the time he does come in, where will he feed back out in regards to track position? Because those who are doing the 2-stop strategy, they could well be bunching up again in the pits, which is going to give Jeff Gordon a real advantage when he comes out ahead of him and completing an undercut.
Now, running in P15 at the moment, as we see Andre Lotterer down the inside of Kamui Kobayashi for P2. So Lotterer, he's on the 2-stop strategy with Kobayashi on the 1-stop strategy. That is...
That's Scott Dixon
that's
behind
Scott Dixon, yes.
One.
I was just thinking, is that Van Dorn? Surely not, but then I remember Scott Dixon is a lap down on them. It seems pretty weird saying that Scott Dixon is 1 lap down. It doesn't really happen at all often, but having been through the pits 3 times, if he wasn't a lap down, I'd be very surprised.
Yeah, well, he's about to unmap himself from the arrows of Kobayashi. Here we go.
Yeah, so Scott Dixon down the inside of Kamui Kobayashi. This is not for position. This is Scott Dixon trying to unlap himself. He does indeed get past, and he will now set his sights on getting through Andre Lotterer, but Kobayashi wants to get track position back. He doesn't want to be held up by a back marker. Again, seemingly weird calling Scott Dixon a back marker, but still, Kobayashi back past Dixon again as De La Rosa is into the pits for his one and only stop. Tom, talk us through this one.
Right, so he's most certainly going to go through to the end. You've been looking at under 10 seconds for this pit stop here. Let's see what we're looking at. It's 9.3, so that's a good stop there for De La Rosa. Out on his way. Now, can he go to the end of the race without needing to stop again due to mechanical gremlins like last year?
So, onto the fresher tyres goes Pedro de la Rosa. We will watch his progress with every eagerness to see how he goes through the order now. He's dropped down out of the top 15 now, but we still have a long way to go here. And now in P13, Tom, Felipe Nasr, your other driver there, you gave him another shot in the car after Jaime Alguersuari decided that music was a bit more important to him. Nasr, he started this race in P23, just checking my notes there. P23, he's up into 13th place now. So up a gain of 10 positions there for Nasr. He's not doing a bad job, is he?
Well, he's yet to stop Topher, I believe. Oh yeah, he has been in the pits. Yeah, I think Nasr has been in the pits. He probably just got the better track position to a lot of other drivers who have been held up in the pits. By the way, he's doing a really fine job. De La Rosa is behind him now. He's outside the top 15. De La Rosa is going to... Ooh, nearly wheel to wheel there between Dixon and Kobayashi. That was a little bit naughty there from Dixon as he was trying to unlock himself. He almost sort of ran Kobayashi off the road a little bit.
Well, they're both running separate races here at the moment. Kamui Kobayashi is trying to get, maybe at the very least, a podium here today. Whereas Scott Dixon, he's trying to get himself back onto the lead lap if he can. So both very different intentions between those two. And Scott Dixon possibly trying to say, oh, he's got white! And Kamui Kobayashi may be running Dixon off the track there. We'll have to look at that again, and we do indeed get a replay. But Dixon running off the circuit, we ride on board with him now. So we'll have to wait and see what role Kobayashi had in this one. Did go around the outside. And actually, no, I'm not going to put any blame on Kobayashi there. I think Dixon maybe just got a bit caught out by the closing speed there. So Dixon off the road. It has been a miserable afternoon for him so far. 3 times through the pits, he's not on the lead lap. He's lapped down on Van Dorn, Lotterer, Kobayashi, and now probably more drivers. Reversing back onto racing line, that's a little bit dangerous there from Dixon, but looks like they're onto cars immediately there. Hulkenberg has just gone through the shot, as has Verne. He's waiting for De Resta as well. Nakajima goes through the shot. So this has just gone from worse to even more worse for Scott Dixon. It's been an absolutely rotten afternoon as Kobayashi is out of the race. He's just shown up as retiring. We're not sure what's happened to him there. So as the replay starts really pulling off, and it's an electrical problem for Kobayashi. That is a real shame for the home hero, the Japanese driver. He was looking good to maybe get on the podium at his home event. But as he gets involved with an incident involving Scott Dixon, he now has a mechanical issue and he's out of this race. So, Tom, look who's now up into P3. It's the series returnee Pascal Wehrlein, now running in P3 in the HES. That was a bit of a mental lap there.
It was, and can we go back to what we were saying about the Dixon spin? I mean, that was not Kobayashi's fault. I think Dixon was trying to be too ambitious, going around 100R, which is not... We have seen overtakes there in real life, but in this particular series, you can't really overtake around the outside there unless the driver in front of you has got a mechanical problem.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there, Tom. I think it was just a simple case of Scott Dixon getting caught out by the closing speed there. So, well, it's all elementary now anyways. Kamui Kobayashi has now retired through a mechanical issue. So Jeff Gordon there getting a little bit wrong through the chicane, but he's able to continue. So we are now on to 4 retirees: Fittipaldi, Montero, Hartley, and now Kamui Kobayashi, all retiring from the Fuji Grand Prix. We're on lap 31 out of 54 retirees, and again, Tom, it's been a pretty good attrition rate compared to what we've seen in previous races in the Grand Prix World Series. It's a pure fun racing with cars actually on track. If you think back to Adelaide, we had like however many cars finishing there. I think we only had 9 drivers who were actually classified in the race in Adelaide, and we're getting a lot better in terms of our attrition this time around. It's so much better for the series actually seeing some proper racing out on track.
Sure, and yeah, it was in the Elite 2 race. We had 21 drivers making it to the end, which is great to see. There's 22 running at the moment, including Scott Dixon. So we've got on course for potentially a similar amount of drivers finishing this one, which is great to see in the Grand Prix World Series. We want to see great racing all the way through, and the problem is when there's less drivers in the running, there's less racing going on. So there's a lot to look out for in this one, as we've seen. You know, particularly Scott Dixon trying to unlap himself from De La Rosa was, you know, one of the dramas we've had. But we're looking at De La Rosa. I thought it would be on the tail of Salo very, very shortly, and it is now. Now the problem is, once he gets ahead, is Salo going to get back on him on the slipstream? De La Rosa just waits, and I think until the very last moment. He's been very clever here, Topher, because he's going to wait until getting to turn 1 to get the move done here on Salo without the 40 fighting back.
We ride on board now with Andre Lotterer, who hasn't yet won a race in the Grand Prix World Series, but looking at his stats here, he has one of the best. De Costa's out. So it's a suspension failure there for the Super Aguri team. And De Costa, who was leading the championship earlier on in the season, is his front left, as you can see there, dangling from the suspension arms. De Costa becomes our 5th retirement in this race. And it's a home Grand Prix for the Super Aguri team, Tom. That's not really what they wanted to see.
Nah, that's a really bitter blow there for De Costa. He needs the... I mean, he went into the rounds, just looking to see where he was in the driver's standings. 3rd he was in the driver's standings coming into this. Well, he's not going to be leading the championship by the end of this round, that's for sure.
Well, no, clearly not, as Pascal Wehrlein comes into the pits from P3. That gives 3rd place to Marco Andretti in a manner. We've had one manner retire from this race already in the form of Brendan Hartley, who retired with an engine issue. So Andretti doing a very good job here in upholding the honour for the Manor team. Up there at P3, will he bring home a podium here, Tom? It's not completely out of the question, I should think.
No, I don't think so. Just looking at De La Rosa, he's fighting with his teammate Felipe Nasr. Nasr probably needs to get out of the way to let De La Rosa through here, because they were fighting each other on the start-finish straight. And Verne's out. Verne's got a problem.
And it's a retirement for Jean-Eric Verne, our reigning champion. He's pulled over to the side of the track with an electrical problem. So when it looked like he was actually starting to get on top of the car again and potentially bring home a good amount of points, he now pulls over to the side with an electrical problem as Van Dorn pulls into the pits out of the lead for what should be his final pit stop of the race. And Verne's waiting a little bit to get out of the car there, but he is out of the race. Scott Dixon now all over the back of, I think that was Kazuki Nakajima maybe? Yes, it is Nakajima. Trying to get through there into... oh, actually, is that Sato, actually? I'm looking at helmet there. Yeah, that's actually Takuma Sato, so Dixon's a lap down on even Takuma Sato, because Sato's running in P14 and Frains is in P15. So yeah, Dixon's just that far down the order with being a lap down. Now, there is the sole remaining Manor running now in second place, as Van Dorn has come in for his second pit stop. Paul Di Resta now pulls into the pits as well. Di Resta looking good for some points here today. Andre Lotterer assumes the lead of the race, but he is still to make a pit stop of his own. Looking at the graphic there, Di Resta dropping down to P14 there at least. As Pascal Wehrlein, he's now challenging Tom Christensen for 11. So Wehrlein on the fresher tyres, he's now up into P11, and he will want to get through into the points to basically repay the faith that Phil Kinch has had in bringing him back to the Grand Prix World Series. Looking at the order at the moment, we're in the middle of the pit stop phase at the moment, so don't take this as the final result or anything just yet. But Andre Lotterer leads ahead of Marco Andretti. Van Dorn, the Nets race leader, in P3 ahead of Nico Hülkenberg, and Kazuki Nakajima, they're in P5. Dixon has just come into the pits again for a fourth time. And I'm struggling to think what to say about Scott Dixon. It's just been that kind of afternoon for him where it's just been one thing after another. It's been a bit of a snowball effect for him, hasn't it, Tom? It's just been one thing after another, and I bet Scott Dixon can't wait to see the end of this race.
I'm sure, and at least he'll get to the end of the race. Now, here's something interesting for you, Topher, and for those who are listening and watching. Last season, in the Fuji Grand Prix, Verne, Kobayashi and Hartley, championship contenders, retired. This year, exactly the same.
Oh, so maybe a little bit of fate conspiring there against those drivers then, Tom.
It's probably a coincidence, but imagine if we get to season 3, they're all competing and get a similar result. Is that Di Silvestro coming up? I think Naz's in as well for Prost.
Yeah, Di Silvestro and Naz are both coming into the pits at the same time. They're out of the points paying positions. We'll have to wait and see how the rest of their race pans out later on. Pascal Wehrlein down the inside of Mika Salo, and Salo's having a good race here. He's yet to score points in the Grand Prix World Series, but he's running up there in P9 at the moment. I'm not actually sure if he's pitted or not yet, Tom. You might have to remind me on that one. But as it stands, Salo running P9. Maybe some points for Forti Corsi again. We still have a long way to go, obviously, but that's a really good run from Salo, who's yet to finish a race this season.
It is, and can he get the car to the end? That's another thing. Nasser rejoining the race in what looks like 15th place. He's on fresher tyres, so he's got enough time to get past a few cars to get back into the points. De La Rosa in 7th place as Lotterer comes into the pits for his final stop.
So we will wait to see where Lotterer filters out of his final pit stop. Marco Andretti also coming in as well. So we'll wait to see how the field progresses past them as they come into the pits. Van Dorn reassumes the lead of the race here in Fuji with Andre Lotterer there. 17 laps of fuel that will take him to the end of the race. Nico Hülkenberg also coming in as well. He's coming in for his final pit stop. Nakajima in P5, he's also into the pits as well. Here is your race leader, Stoffel Van Dorn. He won his first race back in the Grand Prix World Series last time out in Yongam. He wants to make it 2 from 2. He's done it in qualifying. Can he do it in the race?
I mean, just looking at Van Dorn's pace, he's over 11 seconds in front of Lotterer. He's got to hope he does not suffer the same issues as Dixon did. And De La Rosa back up into third place now. He's going to the end, remember, Topher. So I'm not saying he's going to get a podium, but a top 5 finish is most certainly possible, and they very much need it.
It is very possible indeed for De La Rosa and for the Prost team headed up by Tom Cairns next to me. And it has been a disappointing season so far, hasn't it, Tom? A lot was expected of the Prost team, especially after taking 2 victories last time out. But I think it just goes to show just how competitive this series actually is, Tom.
And Sato down the inside of Marco Andretti. Now, I can't remember if Sato's been in the pits, but he's got removed on Andretti. That's interesting.
We now ride on board with Tatiana Calderon there in the MasterCard Lola. She hasn't really featured that much so far in the season so far. She has an average qualifying position of 24, so not really anything to write home about in qualifying, but much better in terms of her race pace. She's finished on average in 14th position. She does have some points to her name. She came home in 8th position in Malaysia, so she's up and running as far as her points tally is concerned. But generally qualifying at the back, which in a series like this, Tom, really you want to be stopping... sorry, I'm tripping up over my words again. He really wants to be running up at the front to have any chance of scoring points, as Sato and Andretti are both into the pit. So Andretti running in 2nd place earlier on. He now takes his final scheduled pit stop and he will drop down currently into 8th place. Is he going to come ahead of Buemi? No, he's not. And he's also dropped by Magnussen and Nakajima. Sato is there in P10. No, Gordon's gone through. So waiting to see where they're going to filter out. They're dropping right down the order a bit further than I thought they might. They will be on the fresher tyres, so there's still a long way to go. We'll have to see how they get through the order later on. Felipe Nasr up into 11th place now. Nasr having an absolutely fantastic drive at the moment. Started in P23, now running in 11th. We're not sure if he has to pit again. I'm sure we will find out.
He's already been in, Topher. He's already been in for his 2nd stop.
He's already been in, thank you, Tom. So Nasr running in P11 on merit at the moment. It's been a fantastic drive from the Brazilian, possibly trying to stake a claim to have the seat for the rest of the season. He didn't really do much in his debut at Yongam. Trying to look through my notes here. Where did he finish? I can't actually find his name unless I'm being completely blind here.
Whilst you're looking for that, Topher, and just looking at Felipe Nasr's pace, because remember, it's only a few laps ago since he came in for his final stop, so he'll be on much fresher tyres than the leaders, so we'll want to have a look at his pace and perhaps maybe close down on the likes of Jeff Gordon, Kevin Magnussen, Kazuki Nakajima and co.
So I've just found Felipe Nasr. It took me a little while longer to find than I thought it might. But, in Yongam, he qualified in 20th and he finished in 14th, so a fairly solid debut in a Grand Prix World Series, but today he's really staking a claim for his seat. He wants to see out the season with Prost instead of Alguersuari, but of course it's not down to them, it's down to Tom Cairns here as the team principal of the Prost team to make that decision. There are our retirees. Pietro Fittipaldi was the first of the drivers to retire. He had an engine problem. Then Thiago Monteiro had an electrical issue that dropped him out. Brendan Hartley's engine gave out before Kumaru Kobayashi got a little bit tangled up with Scott Dixon before developing his own electrical issue. Antonio Felix da Costa, his suspension collapsed on him, and then John-Eric Verne also having an electrical issue. 6 retirees so far from the League 1 Fuji Grand Prix. As it stands, 11 laps to go here at the Japanese circuit. Stoffel Van Dorn leads and is on course for a 2nd win out of 2 in Season 2 of the Grand Prix World Series. Andre Lotterer running well in 2nd position, 18 seconds off the lead at the moment. De La Rosa making a one-stop strategy work en route to P3 at the moment, but he's got Pascal Wehrlein only 4 tenths behind him in P4. Nico Hulkenberg looking to add to his points tally in P5. Paul di Resta 6th ahead of Buemi, who has Nakajima and Magnussen for company, and Jeff Gordon doing well in the 40 Corsi, running up there in the top 10, and Jos Verstappen there in the Minardi locking up a bit while he has, I think that's Tatiana Calderon for company, the Colombian, trying to close down on the Dutchman there. But at the front, Van Dorn enjoying a lead of 18.1 seconds as it stands at the moment.
So Nasr has overtaken Jeff Gordon. So both Prost cars back into the top 10 as Wehrlein gets ahead of De La Rosa, that was coming, to be honest with you, because Wehrlein is on the fresher tyres than De La Rosa is, so I don't think De La Rosa would be too disappointed to lose that podium position. Now remember, De La Rosa finished 4th in last year's Fuji Grand Prix.
That is very true. So Wehrlein up into P3 past Pedro De La Rosa. But I think, to be fair, Tom, even if De La Rosa doesn't finish on the podium here today but still brings home 4th place, that's still a positive result for you and the team, given how your season has gone so far.
Indeed, and just looking at Di Silvestro in 12th place, trying to get into the points as well. She could really do with a good haul of points. I don't think that she's got a point so far this year, Di Silvestro. Just trying to have a look to see what she's come up with this season so far. No, she's retired from all 4 races this season so far, so should she get to the checker flag in this one, it'll be her first this season.
It was a real shame for Di Silvestro. We already mentioned it earlier. She won the Vancouver Grand Prix at the start of the season, which became a non-championship event after some pit lane issues. And since then, it just hasn't happened for her. We were expecting her to maybe be a dark horse for the season, especially after the performance she put in Vancouver. But 4 retirements in 4 races, as you say, Tom, this finish for Alan Charles and the MasterCard Loader team would be very welcome, even if it's not in the points, Tom. I think just finishing a race for her would be more than welcome.
Well, she could get more than that. If she can get onto the back of Jeff Gordon, she may well take 11th place. And if something happens up front, she may well bag her first point of the season. Now, we've got an opportunity to look at the lap times here, because Van Dorn's posted a 1 minute 23.5. What about Lotterer, who's about to cross over the line in the BMS Scuderia Italia? You can see they're just going past the pit entry, coming onto the start finish straight. His time is going to be a 1 minute 23.4, so he's taking a 10th out of Van Dorn's lead, which is not very much at this stage, to be honest with you, given the gaps where they are, but it's an interesting assessment nevertheless.
And Di Silvestro has made her way past Jeff Gordon into P11, so Di Silvestro now only 1 position away from a points-paying position. We're currently still looking at the lap times. Wehrlein and De La Rosa, 3rd and 4th fastest laps. Now Hulkenberg actually lapping faster than Wehrlein there, so he's closing in on the gap to those two there. We're currently looking at Mika Salo, the 240 Corsi's running line astern in 12th and 13th position. There is Andre Lotterer in P2 and Wehrlein in P3 as well. So Wehrlein, what an inspired call from Phil Kinch to drop Alex Albon and replace him with Pascal Wehrlein. So far, it's been a fantastic drive for the German and possibly on course for a podium in his first race back in the Grand Prix World Series. Now, there's been a change of position there between the 40 Corsi, Salo getting ahead of Jeff Gordon. And Di Silvestro, she's only a second and a half away from the back of Felipe Nasser, who's up into P10. So if Di Silvestro can get onto the back of the Prost, she's dropped a little bit in that last sector. It's now down to 1.4 seconds between them. Maybe a point could be forthcoming for MasterCard Lola and Simona Di Silvestro, riding on board with Stoffel Van Dorn in the leads as we now look at Tatiana Calderon behind Scott Dixon. I've sort of lost track of where Dixon is in this race. I don't know who's actually lapped him and who hasn't. So is that Calderon trying to lap him? Oh, Di Silvestro's had an engine blowout. So Di Silvestro, we were just talking about her possibly getting her first points of the season, and it's now come to naught, as it will be a 5th retirement in 5 races for the Iron Maiden, the Swiss Miss, as people know her. And what does she have to do to get a decent result, let alone finish a race? I'm looking back through the notes that we've got here, Tom. So round 1, Di Silvestro, engine blowout. Adelaide, gearbox issue. Sepang, engine blowout. Yongan, gearbox issue. And it's alternating between them. She's had another engine blowout here. She's getting very close quarters with the cars trying to pass her. She needs to pull over to the side of the circuit as soon as she can. But it's a 5th retirement in 5 races, Tom. It's not going at all well for the Lola team.
No, it's not. I just saw the man going by. It was Marco Andretti who tried to go round her, and he nearly got caught up in a right mess. So Di Silvestro was very lucky to not collect the manor as it's trailing in smoke. Scott Dixon moving out of the way of back markers. I mean, it just sums up his day, doesn't it? And Pascal Wehrlein, he'll be very happy with his 3rd place in the AGS, his first race back in the Grand Prix World Series. I'm pleased to see he's been given another chance, because whilst it may not have worked out in the BAR, I still felt that there was something in him. But was going to see the sparks in this Grand Prix World Series with whichever team was going to be out. So I'm pleased to see Wehrlein doing well in this.
I like how you made the Sparks comment as Sparks being kicked up on the main straight. That's very good. Di Silvestro is still going. She's having an engine blowout, and now she pulls off, but she's gone. For I think that's an entire lap with an engine blowout there, Tom. I'm pretty sure it's at that corner earlier on where her engine let go. So she's done an entire lap with her car close enough to being on fire. She really should have pulled that over a lot earlier than that, but it seems like she hasn't got in anyone's way. She now pulls over to the side of the circuit and is officially out of the League One Fuji Grand Prix, a 5th retirement in 5 races, as we said, for the MasterCard Lola.
Just conscious of how that car was being pushed off the track there, but it's alright, it's out of danger, so that promotes Salo and Gordon up to 11th and 12th. Tom Christensen in 13th position ahead of Marco and Takuma Sato in 15th in the Onyx. Nakajima up to 8. He's up to 8. I don't know why I had Shima. He's in 8th place at the moment in the Onyx, so at least Onyx can come away with some points in this. But Sato's just not had the best of days, but at least he'll get to the checker flag in this, unlike in last year's event.
And, well, Tom, what can we say about this driver here out in front at the moment, Stoffel Vandoorne? He was dropped at the end of Season 1 by Simtek in favour of Jamie Whincup, owing to inconsistent form, as Scott Woodward put it. He's brought him back into the race seat, and Stoffel Vandoorne rewarding him with 2 pole positions, and is currently on course for a second win in 2 races. It's been absolutely fantastic from Vandoorne so far. I'm sure Scott Woodward must be thinking, why didn't he put him in at the start of the season?
It's been fantastic. I mean, I was really puzzled to the fact that Scott Woodward decided to drop Stoffel Vandoorne at the end of Season 1, because I felt that he'd done a good enough job. And it's proved that my word was right. He certainly earns the right to be in the Grand Prix World Series, and I'm sure a lot of other teams will be asking for his signature.
Well, the driver market is a little bit of a closed book when it comes to the Grand Prix World Series. Basically, it's a first-come, first-served basis, so when we started up the Grand Prix World Series, the team manager said, I want Arrows, I want Super Aguri, I want 40 Corsi, and so on. Same applied for the drivers. I want Takuma Sato, I want Sebastian Buemi, I want Pascal Wehrlein, and so on. When it comes to driver transfers, you can, of course, go and negotiate with someone like Scott Woodward and say, would you mind if I possibly have Stoffel Vandoorne for next season? I mean, of course, Scott Woodward is probably going to say no, because he's very happy with Stoffel Vandoorne at the moment. But at the end of the day, if he's your driver, you've got first call on him. So when we come to Season 3, Scott Woodward will undoubtedly retain the Simtek team going into Season 3. He will have first call on the services of Stoffel Vandoorne, so he'll probably say yes. But in the eventuality that he says no, he doesn't want him, then Vandoorne becomes a free agent, and it is a first-come, first-served basis of whoever then says they want Stoffel Vandoorne first, that's the team that he goes to. It's a very simple system that we have in the Grand Prix World Series. Pascal Wehrlein running there in 3rd place. He was a free agent at the end of Season 1 after BAR dropped him in favour of bringing back Sebastian Buemi. Tom Butterworth making the decision there. Wehrlein was out of the seat for the first few races of this season, with Phil Kinch deciding to bring him in place of Alex Albon, and so far Wehrlein on for a podium in his returning race. But Stoffel Vandoorne out in the lead, 17.5 seconds over Andre Lotterer. It's been absolutely dominant so far from Vandoorne. Scott Woodward, like I said, he must be thinking, why did he not bring Vandoorne back into the team for the opening race of the season? Because Vandoorne surely would have been leading the championship if that's the case. Of course, it's all hypothetical at the moment, Tom, but it's one of those big questions of what if I'd done that?
Well, I'm just looking at the championship standings as it stands. I mean, Sato's not scoring. Hulkenberg is in 5th place, so he would most certainly be taking the lead in the driver's standings. Vandoorne would not be too far off.
We now ride on board with Stoffel Vandoorne in the lead of this race. We're on lap 46 out of 50. Only a handful of laps left to go before we reach the conclusion of the Fuji Grand Prix. Kevin Magnussen, after struggling earlier on, he's up into P9, so he's put those earlier issues behind him, and he's now running within the points. So Phil Kinch and the AGS team looking good for a double points finish here today. With a handful of laps to go, it is looking good for the Simtek of Stoffel Vandoorne. Scott Woodward possibly going to get a 2nd win in a row and 3rd of the season. Scott Dixon getting a victory earlier in the season. And oh no, that's Stoffel Vandoorne! Stoffel Vandoorne, we were just talking about how brilliant he's been coming into the season. He's now had an engine problem. Oh no! I mean, we talked about it quite a few times, Tom. Some people might call that the commentator's curse, but I can't believe that. Stoffel Vandoorne, he's been so dominant. He's just dropped out of the race. Like, Tom, help me get my head around that.
Quite literally, actually, because I've got my hands on the back of my head, even though I'm not the team manager of Simtech. You have to feel for Stoffel Vandoorne and for Scott Woodward here, because that is probably the most painful retirement he's ever going to have in the Grand Prix World Series. That is so bad. I mean, that is heartbreaking. I just don't know what to say now.
And Scott Woodward, he earned the rather unwanted moniker last season of the unluckiest team principal because he was in a position to win races on more than one occasion, but it never happened for him. He always had something go wrong, and it looked as if for this season he'd finally put those demons to bed. He got 2 race victories on the board and is easily fighting for the championship, but today Scott Dixon, who we ride on board with now, 4 times through the pits, and he's now down well out of the points. And Stoffel Vandoorne, I mean, 3 laps from the end and what would have been a second win in as many races, and he is out. There's going to be no points for Simtech today. But Tom, the driver who has benefited from that and gone into the lead, Andre Lotterer, he's now on course to take his and BMS Scuderia's maiden victory in a Grand Prix World Series. So we could well be getting 5 different winners from the first 5 races, Tom.
Well, don't forget, Andre Lotterer won the second race of Season 1 in Marrakesh when he was an AGS driver, so this would be his second.
Ah, yes, thank you, Tom. I completely forgot about that, but it is definitely BMS Scuderia's first victory in the championship.
Yeah, either way, it's a fantastic victory for the BMS Scuderia Tally Squad, and obviously for Emma Featherstone, I think it is, who's in charge of that. She'll be very delighted to see Andre Lotterer up there, and the battle for third is going to go right to the very end. You can see De La Rose from your picture. He's under threat now from Nico Hulkenberg, so this is going to go right to the very end. I mean, we've got 3 laps remaining. It's not whether Hulkenberg can catch up to him, it's whether he can pass him. And also up to 5th place, and we haven't discussed about him that much in this one, Paul de Resta.
De Resta having a very good run here so far, up in P5 in the Midlands. He's on course for a good haul of points there for Michael Gillespie and his team. Pascal Wehrlein here in P2. Who would have thought that he'd be on course for a podium in his first race back? It's been a fantastic drive there from the German. I mean, if I was to say to you at the start of this race, Tom, that the podium was going to be Lotterer, Wehrlein and De La Rosa, what would you have said?
I probably would have been eating my own pants if I saw that.
Hopefully a clean pair of pants, but anyway, it's neither here nor there.
I wouldn't be the one to be going right now.
Looking further down the order, we've got Felipe Nasser there in P9 as well, so Prost on for double points finish here, and Mika Salo in P10, so he could get his first points on the board here today. There is Robin Fraines trying to get past Jeff Gordon in the other 40 Corsi. Fraines has been a little bit quiet this race. He came into this season expecting to challenge for podiums and possibly a victory here and there, but Fraines hasn't really been on the pace, or at least not on the pace of his teammate Antonio Felix da Costa, who is out of this race but has scored 2 podiums across the course of the season. So Fraines, he might need to do something to up his game because he's been a little bit underwhelming. I mean, if I do say so myself, Super Aguri is my team, Fraines is my driver. And I will be honest, I was expecting a bit more out of him this season, but it's a very competitive field. I know that he's not necessarily going to be running up at the sharp end. So we'll have to wait and see how the rest of the season pans out for Robin Fraines. Pascal Wehrlein there in P2. We're only a couple of laps away from the end of the Fuji Grand Prix. There is Jeff Gordon under attack from Tom Christensen. So Fraines has got past Jeff Gordon there for P13, and now Gordon possibly dropping down to P15 with the Minardi of Christensen behind him. We are running now on the penultimate lap of the race. Andre Lotterer with a gap of 16.3 seconds, now 16.4 seconds over Pascal Wehrlein.
Whilst De La Rosa's trying to fend off Hulkenberg, Naz is trying to fend off Salo as well, so those 2 battles are going to go right to the very end. Marco Andretti sees another couple of seconds of drift. He's probably not going to be challenging those 2, so at least going right to what you were saying about Fraines. I mean, he finished on the podium in Fuji last year, which is only his second race in the Grand Prix World Series, but today he just hasn't been able to cut it.
No, it's been a bit disappointing for Frayne, so I don't really have any comment just yet as to why that might be the case. But on the graphic there, we haven't seen this on camera, but on the graphic, Nico Hulkenberg is through into P3 past De La Rosa. So after Van Dorn's retirement, Hulkenberg smelled the chance for a podium here. He has gone and taken out with both hands, and he is now past De La Rosa into P3. Hulkenberg possibly set to take the lead in the Drivers' Championship as a result of this. We will bring you the points as soon as we see them at the end of the race. But De La Rosa still on course for a very strong result in P4, on for a good haul of points here. There is Nico Hulkenberg, now into P3 and on course for his third podium in 3 races. It's been a very strong start to the season for the German. And is that De La Rosa in the background? De La Rosa pulls into pits. It's a throttle problem for the Prost, and he was 1 lap away from getting a possible 4th place finish. And Tom, dare I ask you to talk me through this one?
This is a repeat of last year as well. He was on course for a victory at some point, and it's happened again in the closing stages.
I don't know what to say, Tom. I know it's your team. I feel so sorry for you. Pedro De La Rosa, he was looking good for a podium earlier on. He dropped down to 4th, which would have been a very welcome 12 points for Tom Cairns and the Prost team. He's now out of the top 10. He's down into 11th on the graphic, and I don't have any words for that. But we're on to the final lap here. We're only a few corners away from the end of the race. We're looking at Nico Hulkenberg, but up the road, Andre Lotterer is about to get his second Grand Prix World Series victory and the first for BMS Scuderia Italia, and Pascal Wehrlein on for a very good podium in second place. There he is, out of the final corner. There we go. Andre Lotterer has crossed the line. Andre Lotterer wins the League One Fuji Grand Prix. So, slightly beneficial, I think it has to be said, from Wehrlein's retirement, Van Dorn's retirement so close to the end. But I don't think Emma Featherstone and the BMS Scuderia Italia team will care for one moment. Emma Featherstone, BMS Scuderia, you are Grand Prix World Series race winners. A very good job there from Andre Lotterer. Pascal Wehrlein, Phil Kinch, your decision to drop Alex Albon and bring in Pascal Wehrlein has been vindicated. Excellent job there from the returning German. Nico Hulkenberg, a third podium in 3 races, and I'm pretty sure that will give him the lead in the Drivers' Championship. Paul di Resta, 4th place, a very good result there for the Midland squad. That will get them some much needed points there in P4. Sebastian Buemi in P5, and hello, what have we got going on here? This is for P9 between Salo and Andretti going to the line. Who's going to get it? It's Salo gets it by 3 thousandths of a second. So Nasser's finished in 8th ahead of them, and Salo out-drags Andretti by the slenderest of margins. Andretti surely thinking if only he'd got his foot down on the power at the final corner just a split second earlier. But still, it's a point for Marco Andretti in P9. Salo opens up his account in... Andretti in P10, sorry. Mika Salo opens his account in P9. 2 points for him and for Forti Corsi. Nasser in 8th, and Magnussen, a double points finish for AGS in 7th. And Nakajima, 6th place on home soil. An absolutely fantastic result. Here is the official finishing order. Andre Lotterer wins the Fuji Grand Prix ahead of Pascal Wehrlein, a podium on his return. Nico Hulkenberg, 3rd in the championship, and 3rd in the race, and we think the championship lead with it. Paul di Resta 4th ahead of Buemi, Nakajima, Magnussen, and Nasser. Salo beating Andretti to P9 by 3 hundredths of a second. 3 thousandths. Takuma Sato just missing out on points in P11. Then Pedro De La Rosa, what could have been for him? Robin Frames in 13th, ahead of Tom Christensen, Jeff Gordon, Verstappen, and Tatiana Calderon, the last on the lead lap. Dixon a lap down after a miserable day. Stoffel Van Dorn, I don't need to say anything more about him. Simona Di Silvestro in 20th, first of the retirees, ahead of Verne, Da Costa, Kobayashi, Hartley, Montero, and Fittipaldi. And Scott Dixon, he gets the points for fastest lap. So some consolation there for the Simtech team. I'm running out of breath here, Tom. You can probably tell by the fact I'm tripping up over my worm so much. I'm running out of breath after all the action that was going on in that race. Can you try and make any sense of what was going on in those last few laps?
I mean, I have to feel for Scott Woodwis, because that victory could well come, costly to him later in the year. It really, really could. And I'm just looking at some great drives, actually, Topher. You'll be amazed by this, actually. Sebastian Buemi, 19th to 5th. Felipe Nasser, 23rd to 8th. Pascal Wehrlein, 8th to 2nd. Kazuki Nakajima, 14th to 6th. Paul di Resta, 15th to 4th. And Mika Salo, 20th to 9th. So we've had some great drives, not just at the front of the field, but from the back as well.
You know what? That was just a good, proper motor race. Not a lot of attrition in that, just some good, straightforward Formula 1 action. I think that's probably one of the most enjoyable races we've had so far in the Grand Prix World Series. Would you agree, Tom?
Yeah, I could agree with that. Obviously, I'd have much preferred if De La Rosa got on the podium, but bar that, yeah. But to be honest, Van Dorn deserved to win that race, and I really wanted him to win that because he done everything right in that, and it just all fell apart with 5 laps in the end. So my sincere apologies to Scott Woodward because he did not deserve that by any stretch.
I completely echo those sentiments, Tom. It was a very dominant drive from Stoffel Van Dorn and undoubtedly would have deserved to win that Grand Prix. Not to be, though. As it stands, Andre Lotterer, the winner of the League One Fuji Grand Prix, the 5th winner we've had in 5th races. It's been so competitive so far in Season 2. And that result puts Lotterer up into 2nd place in the championship. I've just had the championship points through. Nico Hülkenberg, 59 points after a 1st, a 2nd and a 3rd in consecutive races. Andre Lotterer, 14 points behind Nico Hülkenberg on 45. Takuma Sato also on 45, a non-score for him today. Antonio Felix da Costa on 43, and Sebastian Buemi up to 5th in the championship with 31 points. Pascal Wehrlein straight up into 14th with his podium today. Mika Salo and Felipe Nasr both getting off the mark with their respective points tallies. Now looking at the constructors table, Arrows, they are now on 84 points. They retained the lead in the constructors championship. No points for Super Aguri though. They stay on 61 points and have been overtaken by Onyx, who are now on 68 points. Simtech, they bring home 2 points. There was a pole position for Stoffel Van Dorn and a fastest lap for Scott Dixon. I think that's little consolation for Scott Woodward and the team, though. They wanted a lot more out of that this time around. Prost adding 4 points to their tally. They are now on 6, and they have overtaken Mastercard Lola for last place. So, Tom, Prost no longer on the bottom of the table.
Yeah, well, if we got those points for De La Rosa, they would have got us out of the drop zone. That really is painful. But we've got 11 more rounds to go, and a lot can still change. So I'm still confident that we can bounce back. And with Alguersuari coming back as well, I've got a good feeling we're going to be in for a cracker of an event here in Chennai, because it proved to be last year, and I've got a feeling we're going to be in for another brilliant showing here in Chennai. And we could have another unexpected winner. Who knows?
Who knows? We will have to wait and see what happens there when we come to the next race, Round 6 Chennai, next Wednesday. Make sure you tune in there. We've had 5 different winners from 5 races across both the leagues. Will we see 6 in each? Make sure you don't miss it. Tune in and find out. Thank you very much for watching. I'm Topher Smith. Alongside me, Tom Cairns. Hope to see you next time.